Hello, everyone. Welcome to Amazing Plantz4mations. I am so excited. Our second episode today. Thank you. I have an amazing guest here. His name, and I should have said this right before we came on, is Dave. And could you mention your last name so I don't mess it up?
Sure, it's Folkenflik.
I was gonna say it like that. I'm like, maybe it's not exactly how it sounds, so I'm not gonna like mess the name up. Um, Welcome to the show. I know he is. I met him in a group we were in. It was like a 6 or 12 week, I think. It was vegan conversation, something to that effect. And I heard a little bit about his journey, and then he joined the vegan knowledge group. So you guys all know he's always commenting and posts his awesome bodybuilding competitions that he works with, and I really appreciate that. So Dave, just from what I read of your bio, he wrote this beautiful journey out for us. So I'm going to share that later today because the whole journey wouldn't fit on my platform here on Restream, but I'm going to try to get back and share that. But I kind of summarized it, and I know you, like me and the rest of us, we tried tons of different diets over time. You grew up basically in the standard American diet. And when you found this, finally, the vegan lifestyle, it seemed like it transformed you basically physically and mentally. I know, just especially from looking at that before and after picture, which I have some more of them to share. And now you, I think, made the connection that we all make. I think we all go in a progression, like, from diet to being vegan, and understanding what it means. And I noticed you do a lot of work to like clean up the environment. So it's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I want to welcome you, and thank you for your patience in getting started a bit late.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here, JJ.
So, Dave, I want to start off by just saying I read a little bit about it in your bio, but just if you could tell us kind of where this all like kind of got started for you. Like, where did you hear about the vegan, and did you think it was crazy before you got started? Let us know how your journey began, or where you were before your journey.
Yeah, I was really thinking about that recently, like, where did this all start, right? And I've been asked before, and I usually point to some documentaries or something, but that was all fairly recent. But as I mentioned to you, back in the, I was an overweight kid, and I wasn't overweight, like, I think until I was about 10 years old. I was thin as a rail, and then I discovered that I like to eat. And next thing you know, I was overweight. And so because of that, I always had sort of body image issues. I just always did. I mean, I get that for some people, they don't have those body image issues. For me, that was a big one. That was really a big thing that kind of like was always in my head, was that I'm fat. And of course, kids can be very cruel, and it was tough growing up as a chubby kid. But a lot of people understand that. And anyway, so I was always dieting. I probably from when I was 16 on, I was always like, on some kind of a diet at least once a year. Like, I got to drop 20 pounds, I got to drop 25 pounds, or whatever. And I've done it many times. I mean, I think I'm the textbook yo-yo dieter. I mean, I have been on so many diets. I lose the weight, and then within, usually months, I gain it back, right?
I totally know what you mean. Like, I've seen my pictures. You can tell which part I'm on. I was like, oh, I think I was on that weird Atkins diet then.
Correct. So that's, that was my life story. And I was, I always tell people I'm really good at losing weight. Well, the reason I'm really good at losing weight is because I'm especially good at gaining weight. So, it's like,
like a cycle, right? Like,
exactly. It's just up and down. So anyway, back in, when I got out of college, I took a job up in Washington, D.C. I live in Florida, and I kind of grew up here. Not completely. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I lived about 5 years in Columbus, Ohio as a child as well. But then my family moved to Florida. I think I was 12 or 13 years old. And so I've pretty much been here ever since, other than a couple of jobs I took and going away for law school, things like that.
Oh,
But
Florida too. We like your weather better.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, I remember when I took that job and moved to DC, and it was cold. I moved up there in September, and I was not used to the winters, and it was cold. And I know I just stayed inside for like 6 months. I didn't leave that, barely left that. I mean, other than to go to work, right? I mean, I'd go to work in the morning, be there all day, then I'd come home.
Come home and get moving, right?
Yeah. And I read this book. I wanted to lose weight, and I'd been on a bunch of different diets already at that point, and I think I was even on Atkins at that point. Had already been on Atkins. I'd already been on, I don't know if I was on South Beach yet, but I did South Beach. I've done Nutrisystem multiple times. I've done Jenny Craig. I've done Weight Watchers. I mean, I've done them all, I think, that were, and successfully by and large, as far as losing the weight, but not successfully in keeping it off. Anyway, late 80s, I read this book called Fit for Life. And it was by Harvey and Marilyn Diamond. And there was actually a connection to Harvey Diamond because my father was actually in the Air Force with Harvey and knew him like 2 decades before that. Yeah. And I think my mom saw like the Phil Donahue show or whatever was the talk show at the time. And Harvey and his wife, I think, were on there giving an interview about their book. And my mom was like, hey, that looks like Harvey that you were in the Air Force with. And my dad's like, yeah, that's who it is. And so my mom or dad bought the book. I don't know who. And they may have read it. I assume they did. But I grabbed a copy of it. I grabbed it from
the name of that so I could remember it.
Yeah. And I read the book. And it was probably the first time that my eyes were open to the fact that, at least according to that book, my eyes were open to the fact that we don't need meat and dairy. Like human beings don't need meat and dairy to survive. Because up to that point, I think I believed what everybody else did, that, if you went a couple of meals without meat, you'd be dead, I mean,
right. That's exactly right. That's true. Yeah. Like the way that we are really taught and to think, and like, that's just so common. Like I never felt right on that Atkins diet, I'll be honest, because even though I did the same way, I lost weight, but something I could never just want to sit there and eat all of that meat. Like, now I really wouldn't want to, maybe if it was Beyond or whatever. Right. But like, it seemed like it's just so like narrow of it. Now I know how crazy it is. Of course you're going to lose weight because you're cutting out everything else. But like the health problems that I probably added to myself that I'm still detoxing from based on that. Right. And it's like, we really need to, our eyes. That's one of the reasons I really appreciate you coming on, because I think there are people watching, and I want people on here that are not vegan, and I welcome them to my channel. Like with the name Vegan Knowledge, it's basically so we can put the knowledge out that we all just came into. And like, I know we both found this later in life, as well as many people. So it's not like, oh, I've been eating this way forever, so I have to keep going. You were always trying to get healthier, so I appreciate that. So yeah. So let you continue. I got on a
sure. That's okay. So anyway, I remember a few things from that book that just stuck with me, right? And one of them was about milk. Like it was the first time I ever heard, why are human beings drinking milk from another animal? Like it makes no sense. And as adults too, because in the wild, in nature, milk is only for babies. Whatever the species is, that's who drinks milk. Adult, cows don't drink milk, and adult anything don't drink milk except humans. We consume milk, and it's not even human milk; it's cow's milk. So that was a point that I, to this day, I mean, of course, I've heard it many times now within the vegan, but that was something that stuck with me. And the other thing that stuck with me was this idea that our digestive tract is much, much, much longer than carnivorous or even omnivorous animals. And so, the way he described it, and by the way, I'm somebody that was a lifelong horrible heartburn sufferer, horrible heartburn. And this point really stood out to me, even though I ultimately didn't stick with it for very long, but this point stuck out to me. It was like, because our digestive tract is so long, it takes a really long time for the foods to push through our system. You're eating, when you eat animal flesh, you know, it is already decaying. I mean, you know, whether we want to accept that or not, from the second you kill an animal, right, it starts to decay. And we found ways to slow that down, refrigeration being the main one. But, you know, before that, you know, canning and salting and whatever. But we have found ways to slow that. But it's still happening, right? I mean, it's still deteriorating. And the idea that Harvey and Marilyn Diamond mentioned in their book was, when you eat that meat, it sits in your digestive tract for up to 24 hours or more, depending on, you know, what you eat, and at 98.6 degrees. And so it is basically putrefying in your body. You know, it's rotting in your body.
And if you've ever smelled rotten meat, you know, or been around something that is in the fridge too long, like, even you can imagine what's in our body. Wow, I think I've heard bits and pieces, but I like the way you put that. I never heard it quite put all the way like that. That's interesting.
Right. And of course, you know, while that's happening, your body is, a couple things are happening. One is that, you know, there's only, I mean, you're going to get some nutrients from it, obviously, but, you know, at some point there's no nutrients to get from it because it's all just putrefied. But also that causes gas, it causes bloating, it causes indigestion. Your body is trying. And the thing about meat is it takes acid to digest that meat. So because if your body's having trouble with digesting it, it just keeps producing more acid to try to take care of it. And of course you're going to get heartburn, and you're going to get indigestion, and you're going to get, you know, gas, because that's what causes it, you know? So, so there's that aspect of it. And I'm not saying that's the only way people get heartburn or gas or indigestion. Obviously we're all sort of, you know, to some extent we're all a little bit different. Some of us have allergies to things, or just things just don't sit with us right, you know, for whatever reason. Probably a lot to do with our biology, you know, and our ancestry, and what sort of foods they ate for potentially millions of years. So anyway, I remember those 2 points from the book. That you know, and basically the idea was that our bodies really aren't designed for this. It doesn't mean that we can't consume meat. Of course we can. And, you know, we have arguably evolved over time to be able to eat that meat and survive, but it doesn't mean that it's not causing other problems, right? And that's, suddenly we have you know, rampant diabetes and colon cancer and heart disease. And it's like, where did those come from? I mean, is that just natural? Is it just from getting old? Do we just get that from being old? Or from being, you know, and I understand that, you know, cancers can be caused by a lot of environmental factors too, but certainly food has to contribute. I mean, we're putting it right into our bodies, right?
Exactly. And I think we don't realize how much food matters to, like, you know, with that argument that, well, we have to eat it, but then we look around the rest of the world. I mean, it's just, you can make a logical, you know, there's all this disease and suffering and so many people on medication, to your point. And I didn't realize that the high saturated fat predominantly, which is in meat and dairy, because we're getting all their fat too, is causing the insulin resistance that's causing such a high rate of diabetes and things. So it's like, it's really eye-opening of things that I thought, this just happens to people. Oh, what a shame. And I never realized what control. And I think I'm so glad you're putting this message out, because we do have control of what we put in our body, which makes a direct result of how our body starts to perform and not have to fight with the meat, you know?
Yeah. So anyway, so I did that. I was on that Harvey Diamond's plan, but here's the thing. In that book, he says the best thing you can do is just eliminate all meat, dairy, and eggs, right, from your diet. Cheese, you know, whatever. Cheese is dairy, but you eliminate all that from your diet. But he said, I understand that a lot of people aren't going to do that, and I suspect they did this so the book would sell. And of course, it was a New York Times bestseller. So he said, well, you could eat, if you want to eat some meat, you know, whatever it is, fish, chicken, whatever it is, it's okay to eat it, but only eat it once a day. And he suggested eating it at dinner, your last meal, but he said you can eat it any time of the day, but just eat it once. And just eat one type of meat at a time. Don't eat like 3 different types of meat at once, because each one requires a little bit different chemical to break down in your gut. Of course, also part of his philosophy was don't mix it with a starch. In other words, don't eat a meat and a potato, because your body's going to produce acid to break down the meat, and it's going to produce alkaline to break down the potato, which is a starch, and they cancel each other out, and nothing's going to get digested.
Wow, and that's what people always know, meat and potatoes diet. Okay.
Yes. And so I did it. I did this diet, and I did eat meat once a day. I ate mostly, probably chicken, but I ate meat once a day, and I lost 50 pounds really quickly, like within 4 or 5 months. I lost 50 pounds, and I felt great. And one of the things he recommends, by the way, this is something that you remind me of, is that he says in the book, at some point, try an all fruit day. Just eat fruit for one day and see how great you feel. Mm-hmm. And I did that a couple of times. I didn't do it a lot, but I did it a couple of times, and I did feel great. Mm-hmm. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful. But the fact of the matter is when I left that job in DC and I moved back to Florida, I pretty much went back to my old, my standard American diet. And I went to law school, and the first semester I gained 50 pounds. First semester I gained 50 pounds. 50,
and it's like they have a name.
Yeah.
For it, right?
Yeah, it kind of is like that, isn't it? So then I started more yo-yo diets. I think I lost most of that 50 on Nutrisystem first, and then I kept it off for maybe, here's the thing. Here's the one thing that I noticed on every diet I've ever been on, every way of eating I've ever been on, except this one, every weight loss thing. I can do it. I can be strict. I can follow the rules. It's really not an issue for me. If I decide I want to do it. Now, understand, if I'm not ready, I won't do it. But if I'm ready and I set my mind to it, no problem. I will do it. There could be a cake in front of me. I won't touch it. But the whole time I'm on it, all I'm thinking about is, God, I can't wait to lose this weight so I can eat again.
Right.
And so as soon as I reached my goal weight, it was back to eating the way I ate before. I mean, it may not have happened that day, but within a few weeks, I was back to eating the way I did before. And guess what? I gained the weight again. And so this happened over and over and over again, and there was probably in my mid 30s, I really started eating better, like as far as what I thought was better. And it was better. I started eating more vegetables. I started eating more salads. I would pretty much have a big salad every day that I'd take to work with me. But my salad still had, chicken in them and bacon bits and whatever.
Salads, Dave.
Yeah. But I was under the impression that, I'm doing, and again, compared to what I was eating before that, fast food, a lot of fast food, I was eating better. It's like Dr. Greger always says, people ask Dr. Greger a question like, is this any good? And he always says, compared to what? Compared to what? It's like, yeah, chicken is good compared to beef, but chicken's not that good compared to a Boca burger, whatever, and so it's the same thing. I mean, I think I was eating a bit better. I quit drinking sodas, just a lot of things that I did do. So that was probably in my mid 30s, I started doing it. And here I am 23 years later. So, it's not like this all happened overnight, right? I mean, my diet started getting a little better, but not that my results were getting any better. I mean, I was still,
up and down.
because my diet was a little better, but it wasn't that much better, And so anyway, I remember back in the early 2000s, I got really into Bikram yoga, if you're familiar with that, hot yoga. And I used to do it.
I know about yoga, but I didn't realize that type of yoga.
Yeah. Well, it's done in a room. It's supposed to be 110 degrees, I think. And it's hot. You get used to it, but it really is a workout. Like you feel worked. It's 90 minutes and you feel worked out when it's done. Well, I did that. I was doing that at least 5 days a week for several years, almost 5 years. And I was thinner then than I had been before, but I still, I was in better shape than I was just from all the sweating probably. But not very muscular, I didn't have a lot of muscle on me, but then I started doing some Pilates and stuff too. All that stuff's great, by the way. I have no no qualms with any of it. It all is good stuff. But my diet was still the same crappy diet, and so I wasn't seeing any results. I was
Hi,
still, I mean,
Carrie, welcome. Raw Intuition. Matt, thank you for joining. And Muriel, I just wanted to quick say hi to them. They're saying hello. Thank you all for
hi,
being
everybody.
here. Appreciate it. I think I hear J&J Video listening in too.
So anyway, lost my train of thought there for a second, but
you were going through
yeah, with the yoga and everything, but a couple things happened during that time. Somebody in yoga gave me a copy of the China study. I remember this. Somebody came in one day and said, have you read this? And I was like, no, I don't even know what it is. And they're like, well, you should read it. And I said, okay, I'll look for it, I'll try to find it or whatever. Probably would have never done it. And they're like, no, that's for you. And they gave me a copy, and I read it, and I was like, okay, this is like making more sense to me now, because the China study basically shows that the people that ate the simple diets in China, the rice and the vegetables, had very low cancer rates and diabetes rates and heart disease rates. And yet the people in the big cities, which had been introduced to the standard American diet, basically the fast food, Beijing, they had KFCs and all that stuff, and everybody was getting sick. Everybody had the same kind of diseases we have, and they were getting obesity, which almost didn't exist in China prior to the introduction of Western diet. So that started to make sense. And then within that period of time, I also read Rip Esselstyn's Engine 2 diet. Again, another New York Times bestseller, and I was like, oh, a new diet, I got to try it. So I read that book, and it was about a vegan diet. I mean, that's what it was. He calls it plant-based, which I understand why, because people have a thing in their head about vegan, and when they see the word, they're just like, I don't want anything to do with that, for some reason, not understanding that it has nothing to do with anything except trying to do less harm to the animals, really. I mean, that's right. What veganism is. But so anyway, I read that book too, and I tried doing that for a short period of time, and I was pretty miserable, to be honest with you, because his diet is whole food, plant-based, and I mean, you're not supposed to use any salt, sugar. I mean, I say any. You're not supposed to add any salt, sugar, or oil to anything. And I tried to do it overnight. I tried to go from being, a standard American diet eater to being whole food, plant-based overnight. And it was not, I didn't know what to eat. I mean, he says in the book what to eat, but it was all pretty much fruits and vegetables. I didn't really know how to cook. I was more of a reheater. I'd always been a reheater. I'd buy things I could reheat. I didn't know how to make recipes and whatever. And I'm not saying I never made something from a recipe in my life, but it just wasn't something I did. So I wasn't all in, I guess, So I did it for a while. I think I probably lost 10 or 15 pounds, and then I just kind of gave up because I was just so hungry all the time. I was hungry. Oh my God, was I hungry, right? Just like every other diet I was on, really, I was hungry.
Right.
So anyway, all that happened. And then I think it was later, I think at that point, what was I? I would have been 40 that was around when I was in my early 40s. And then, but I still really didn't change my diet. And I went on more diets. I went on Nutrisystem again. I went on, Jenny Craig again. I went on all this stuff. And I was just getting to the point where it's almost like I dieted so much that I had diet fatigue.
Right.
And I was doing them I was really being half-ass. I really was on all of them, because I was just like, oh my God, I got to do this again. I got to do this again. I got to do, So I believe it was in either my late 40s or early 50s that I started. And that was about the time that, everybody was getting Netflix and all that kind of stuff. And I started watching some of the documentaries, What the Health and Forks Over Knives.
Young too. We didn't even know you were 50.
Well, thank you. I'm almost 60. But anyway, so I started watching those things, and I also I got Rip Esselstyn's book back out, and I started reading it again, and I started reading some other things, and I was like, you know what, I got to do this. And by the way, this was during the pandemic. I decided I was going to be vegan not long before the pandemic. like September of 2019. And it was going okay. I was doing okay with it. I mean, I was following Rip Esselstyn's plan. I actually subscribed to his meal plan, which is excellent. I mean, it really taught me how to cook. And but again, it's all whole food, plant based, which is fine. But and I initially lost some weight. I want to say I lost 10, 15, maybe 20 pounds.
Nice.
And then the pandemic came along. I also hurt my back. And it kind of became a little bit of a couch. Well, not a little bit. I kind of became a couch potato because of my back. And a pandemic, and I was afraid to like go anywhere or do anything. So the weight really started coming on again. And at that point I was, where I was when in that picture that you posted, that's where I was. I was really 50 pounds. I weighed almost 50 pounds more than I weigh now.
See,
I was
saved in here. This one, right?
Yeah, that one. That's when I started. That's really when I started the plan that I've been on for the last 2.5 years or so. That's when I started that. Yep. So anyway, I was like, I got to find a diet, but I don't want to do Nutrisystem or whatever because nobody had vegan. Nobody had a vegan diet. Like Nutrisystem had a vegetarian diet. And there was only like
that, right? Like
there were like there were only like 3 or 4 meals. Yes, vegetarian is usually milk. It usually has milk and or eggs. Vegetarian food. Right?
And those Nutrisystem though, they're like shakes, I think, right? Like so they probably
they're meals. I mean, they do have shakes, but they're meals. But I mean,
Slim Fast. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I've done that too, by the way. What a surprise. No, they're meals. They're pre-made meals, but they got all the same preservatives and junk in them that the frozen meals you buy in the grocery store, basically. Yeah. I mean, they're like lean cuisine, basically, that kind of thing. So,
point.
I've eaten plenty. I haven't eaten a lean cuisine in a really long time, but I've certainly eaten many of them, and maybe they're better now than they used to be. I don't know, but they always had a lot. Probably not. They always had a lot of preservatives and things in them. Anyway, amongst other things. So that's when I went online and I started searching for vegan diet, and a coaching program came up, and I was like, okay, I got to talk to these people. So I did. It said set up a call, whatever. I was a little skeptical. I'm not going to lie. I was skeptical. And then I talked to them. It was a little expensive. And I was like, I don't know. I could probably do this myself. And then I was like, you know what? I got to do something different. I can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. Something has to change because I'm doing the same thing and I'm getting the same results. And, at that point I was 55 years old. And so I joined a coaching program. It's not the one I'm currently with, but I joined a coaching program, and they gave me a meal plan and they gave me workouts, like weight workouts. Now, I had worked out with weights in my life for sure. I mean, in my teens, I worked out with weights some. In my 30s, I bought a weight machine for my house, and I used to use it pretty much every night. For several years, but it had been a long time since I'd worked out with weights. When I was 55, I probably hadn't worked out with weights since I was in my 30s. Right. But it doesn't mean I hadn't done any strength training. I mean, I'd done Pilates and I'd done some other things, but I hadn't done weight training. And so they gave me, and I mean, I started out with like bands and I mean, not that there's anything wrong with using bands, but I mean, I wasn't, I was starting out with bands and some light dumbbells. I mean, that's what I started with. And again, as most people will tell you, the majority of, at least for weight loss, the majority is diet. Diet is like 80% of the equation. So if your diet's off, most people are not able to out-exercise a bad diet. I mean, if you're a professional athlete, and
I know that for a fact. I remember me and Dawn talk about this all the time. In the previous house we lived in, I would get up, put one of those suits on that you sweat in, and for maybe an hour and a half, faithfully every day, yet every day I was still 885 pounds. And I just, right. I didn't even really continue working out when I went vegan. And you're right. It's not good to not exercise and not work out. I'm not saying that, but if you're doing only one of those and not putting, if you're working out and not eating right, it's really not going to work. You might experience a little bit here and there, but it never sustains.
I agree, you know, and by the way, like Rip Esselstyn, I mean, he is a big advocate of movement. You know, I mean, I just didn't, when I was on his plan, I just didn't do anything special. I mean, I still would go to a Pilates class or whatever, but I wasn't like doing regular, other than, you know, once or twice a week going to a class. I wasn't doing anything regular. Um, other than paddleboarding. I mean, I've been doing that for about 15 years, and I try to do that twice a week. But a lot of times that's pretty leisurely. You know, I'm not always paddleboarding. I'm rarely paddleboarding hard. You know, um, so anyway, so I didn't really do the movement. So they got me involved with the movement. They gave me a meal plan. It was very specific what I should eat. You know, I had a little bit of, I was able to move some things around, but basically they gave me a 7-day meal plan. They gave me
Still
recipes.
whole food plant based, or was it a little more like incorporated some salt or anything in it?
But I would say it wasn't whole food plant based. It wasn't whole food. Okay. It was a lot of whole food, but a couple things. Protein powder was a, you know, a pretty big component of it. Like there's a lot of recipes using protein powder. And of course you can use some mock meats and things like that. You know, I mean, it wasn't, most of the stuff though, that most of the quote unquote meats that they were mock meats that they were having us use were really not the processed ones, you know, like they were tofu, tempeh, some TVP. I mean, they're processed to some degree, but minimally, you know.
I got you. Not like full on like Gardein.
Correct. Like they weren't giving me recipes with Beyond Meat burgers or anything like that, you know.
Unfortunately,
so
they're pretty good.
yeah, those are delicious. Yeah, but so anyway, so I was on that plan. Everything's great. By the way, my coach, I don't know if she's watching this, my prior coach, but her name's Kiera. She's awesome, and
feel free to
yeah,
come
she's
on
awesome.
if you want to.
Yeah, I don't know if she's watching or not. And of course, she lives in Europe too, so the time's probably all messed up. But anyway, she was my coach initially. It was through another coaching program, and you know, it was a good plan, and I lost the weight, and I lost that weight, but I had started listening to a lot of podcasts at that point, right? I wanted to just learn as much as I could about this, about the nutrition aspect, about the weight, about the strength training aspect. I just wanted to learn a lot. And so I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and one of them that I was listening to that I really enjoyed was called Muscles by Brussels. And Muscles by Brussels is a podcast that's done by Danny Taylor and her husband, Giacomo Marchese. And they are both bodybuilders. And they coach bodybuilders. They'll coach. I mean, they don't just coach bodybuilders, but I'm just saying, you know, they have a vegan coaching program. It's called Vegan Proteins Coaching, and they you know, coach a lot. They do coach a lot of bodybuilders, but they also coach, you know, just people that aren't bodybuilding, that are, you know, arguably want to do some bodybuilding, but they don't want to compete in bodybuilding shows, you know, that kind of thing. But they also have people that probably have no interest in competing in anything, just want to look better, you know, or feel better or whatever.
Right.
So, so anyway, it looks like your picture went away, just so you know. I after about a year in the
sorry,
after about a year,
I'll be right back on camera. I just have to
okay, no worries. Okay. So anyway, so I signed up with them with the idea that, okay, now I've lost the weight, I want to build some muscle too, and I want to, you know, get in the shape that I've always wanted to get in, and I've just never been able to accomplish, or never been willing to do the things that I needed to do to accomplish it. So I signed up with them. Giacomo is my coach, although, you know, I get coaching from the whole team, but basically Giacomo is my coach, and that's been our goal. And so for the first year of that, we did what's called a bulking, where I ate higher calories than, you know, I didn't eat weight loss calories. I ate calories to basically gain weight, a little bit over my maintenance calories. And the idea is that if you eat in a calorie surplus, that is, if you give your body more calories than it needs, then it can use those to build more muscle. But of course, you have to work out to do that. You don't just build muscle because you build muscle. You have to actually force those muscles to want to grow. So, so we did that. We did that over the course of about a year, not quite a year. We did that over the course of about 9 months. And then we switched into what's called a cut, which is because you're not going to just gain muscle, right? If you're eating more calories than your body needs for maintenance, you gain muscle, but you're also going to gain some fat. You can't, just gain one or the other. If you're working out, you're going to gain a little of both. So in January of this year, I went on a cut, which means my calories went a little bit below my maintenance, right? So now I'm trying to lose that little extra fat that I picked up, but maintain the muscle. So the thing that I really learned on that first program, or the thing that worked for me, I can't say this will work for everybody because I don't know what everybody's a little bit different, but the reason I wasn't hungry all the time, when I lost the last 50 pounds I lost, I was not hungry all the time. And I also wasn't always thinking, God, I can't wait to lose this weight so I can start eating again. Right. That didn't happen this time. And I believe it's because they really focused on protein, because protein is very satiating. Mm-hmm. And so, one of the guys that was really involved with the first program, the guy that started it, is a guy named Fritz Hortzman. And Fritz would always say, a meal with no protein has no purpose. Now, that's from a perspective of somebody who wants to build muscle. But still, that's what he would say. He would say, if you're eating a meal without protein, you're wasting your time. So they really focused on protein and meeting my protein numbers. And of course, I learned about macros, right? Macronutrients. And macronutrients are what you need to really pay attention to make sure. So macronutrients are calories, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, right? And so there's a certain percentage of each you want to try to get every day. Now, again, this is to build muscle, right? I mean, I don't think, if somebody's not worried about building muscle or not trying to build muscle, I don't think they need to eat extraordinary amounts of protein from everything I've seen. They need to probably eat the minimum required amount.
Right. I think it's important to realize that is that, each of those things is really important. And I love the point that you brought up about being hungry all the time. Really quick, I wanted to say welcome, Philip and Carrie. I think I welcomed you earlier. Muriel. Yes, and Boomer and Beyond Wellness, I wanted to share this with you. She said that she wanted to she had to go. I think she's got some work she had to be at today, but she said that send my best to our friend and motivator, Dave Folkenflik. So thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela.
And thank you, Philip, for joining too. He says hello. Nice to see you again. The one thing, the same with me, was the being hungry. I couldn't stand it. There was one, I think it was Weight Watchers, I tend to talk about a lot, because it would literally tell you that you had to have like this size, like a little portion of vegetables, and I would eat, and I'm like, this is not sustaining to me, especially if you come from someone who's got a bit of weight on them, and then you like years ago, if I had tried to eat 3 sushi rolls for my meal, I would have been like, this is an appetizer, right? Like, there's a certain amount of nutrients that we're not getting from a lot of empty foods too, where we're just keeping, like, if we eat 10 burgers, we might not be getting those macronutrients from that meal. Like, we're not getting to your point, the fiber or whatever we need. And it's like, if you're always hungry, you're never going to sustain something. And one of the things I bet you found, and I find with this, is you can eat a lot more of food and eat when you want, and you're not continuously gaining weight because you're eating the right thing, like, for your body, that's an amazing, like, I think you pinpointed right there what the yo-yo dieting was all about for you, probably for me, and for a lot of people watching this. If you can't sustain a diet, it's because something about it is not resonating or fitting in with you, even though if it's like, one thing is working, something can be working, but we don't stick to it. Like, we're living proof of that, right? Like, so that's amazing. That was a good discovery.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just, and anytime you reduce your calories, if you're used to eating a certain number of calories and you reduce it, there's going to be a little discomfort for a few days, right? I mean, for sure, but it shouldn't just be for the whole time. Your body should get used to it and go, and particularly if the fewer calories that you're replacing the greater calories with are more nutritious, then your body goes, oh, I'm getting the nutrition I need. I don't need to be like, eat more, eat more, eat more.
Right.
So, you know, so I think, you know, I mean, our bodies know what they want, you know, it's just that we suppress that in them for our whole lives. You know, we suppress whatever we can suppress. It's, and, you know, and say, no, you don't. And eventually you get used to that, right? I mean, my body was giving me heartburn. My body was giving me horrible heartburn, and I just didn't listen to it. I kept eating the same
heartburn was
crap.
from tomato sauce, and now I realize probably it was from the cheese that I was eating on the pizza,
Yes.
not even the tomato sauce, right? Like
Yes.
we blame the what do you call it? Like the tomato-y type. I don't know what to
Yeah.
say.
The
Acidic type.
acid, the acids in the tomato, right? I mean, you're
It
thinking it's
probably was
an
help,
acidic
not
fruit.
healthy, right? Like, but it was like I
Yeah.
didn't know all that acid was like we have a different, like you mentioned this earlier, we have a different acidic level than a carnivore who's meant to break down raw meat, and ours is like overworking. Like, what is this stuff I can't break
Mm-hmm.
down? This isn't what belongs
Yeah.
in me. It's
Yep.
amazing.
And your stomach fills up with acid, and the acid gets shot right up your esophagus or whatever. I'm not an anatomy expert, but you know, it gets shot up there, and next thing you know, it's in your chest and your throat, and your jaw hurts. I mean, I can't tell you, there were times I thought I was having a heart attack because I had heartburn so bad. It was brutal. And you're right. I thought it was tomato sauce too for a long time. But it would always happen when I had tomato sauce, but it would almost always happen when I mixed tomato sauce with dairy, like you said. I remember I'd have a meal, and I didn't even probably think about the cheese, but I would have like spaghetti, and then we'd go out for ice cream.
Right.
And then I'd be up all night, like, oh my God, you know. And it's kind of funny that I never went to a doctor for my heartburn. I never did. I just would take Tums or, you know, Alka-Seltzer or something, and sometimes it would get rid of it and sometimes it wouldn't. And eventually, of course, it would go away. And then the next day I'd do the same thing, or maybe it'd be a few days, but the point is it would happen again.
And think about it. That's just trying to get rid of the acid that we just forced into our body. Like we're
Yes.
putting in a problem and just putting a mask on top of it, right?
I can tell you that since September of 2019, when I really committed to this vegan diet, I think I've had heartburn one time. And I mean, I had it multiple times a week for my whole, for 55 years, or for 53 years, 54 years, I had it multiple times a week. And I've had it once in the last, 3 or 4 years. It's crazy.
And it
It's
was
crazy.
pretty early on when I went vegan, the time I did get a touch of it. And it was because, not maybe early on, but early on after I started going back to a lot of the, I went from raw to processed food. And it was some kind of like, it was supposed to be a mock hot wing, I think. And I experienced it just a little bit. But other than that, like the whole, like you said, every time, not every day or every week, I guess, but a lot of times I would have that heartburn. We kept Tums in the house. Now I don't even have any around here because that's how infrequent or never. And it's like, but I eat a lot of tomatoes and things that used to, you know, over time, spaghetti. I had spaghetti when I was doing whole food plant-based. Dawn was making this mushroom spaghetti, and we had it for 2 months almost straight after 1 year on my birthday because I liked it so much. I just kept eating it, and I never got heartburn from it. So that proved to me right there, it definitely wasn't the tomato sauce, right? It was everything stemmed from meat. And you probably are like me, had this revelation, you know, like, wow, all this stuff now makes sense. What was I doing to myself, you know?
Yeah. And by the way, that's why, you know, if I was to drop dead of a heart attack, you know, today, tomorrow, next week, you know, I'm sure there'd be people like, oh, see, he was vegan and he had a heart attack anyway. But it's like, yeah, but for 50 years, I wasn't. For 50 years, I was, you know, I believe I was damaging my body for 50 years. And if my blood work comes back good, but I could have some plaque in my arteries. Of course, I probably do, because I ate like that I ate the way most people eat in the United States for a long time. And there was times like when I was in college, you know, I ate fast food all the time. I mean,
Hmm.
that's what I ate. That was the main thing I ate when I was in college,
Breakfast sandwich, Burger King, McDonald's. I had
Hmm.
many streams of that, especially when I was working a lot on the way to
Yep.
work. Get the big juicy greasy breakfast sandwich.
Hmm.
Lunch at work, everybody's ordering food. Dinner, I'm on
Right.
the way home,
Right.
still late, tired. So a lot of people eat that way, and like you said, I have read though, like Dr. Barnard talks about, he's seen people reverse the plaque in their
Mhm.
arteries. So you're doing the absolute right thing, all of us. Even if we had something in there, we may be dissolving it.
Yeah, for sure. And and I have more recently stopped adding oil and things like that to things because initially that wasn't really my focus. You
Hmm.
know, initially my focus was on losing the weight and getting in good shape. But yes, you're 100% right. You know, now I've been exposed to Dr. Greger and Dr. Barnard and Dr. Clapper and all them and so now I tend to think, well, do I really need this oil? And I don't. You know, I used to use oil like to cook a little bit. I didn't use a ton of it, but I was like, no, I don't even need the oil. What do I need the oil for? And I kind of knew that because that's Rip Esselstyn's thing is you don't need oil. You know, you just don't need it. It's not good for you. And of course, that's because he's following his father's heart disease diet, right? Because his
Right.
father is the sort of one of the preeminent cardiologists that promotes a whole food, plant-based, no salt, no sugar, no oil diet. And he claims to have reversed many, many, many people's heart disease with that. Um, so I'm trying to incorporate more of that. But I still love my protein powder. I still have protein
Mhm.
powder several times a day.
Yeah.
I try to buy good ones. I try to buy, the ones that are tested for the heavy metals and all that. But sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. Um, but in any event, what I found was by consuming enough protein, I wasn't hungry.
I
I'm
mean,
not hungry all the time. Now, I will say that I kind of eat all day. I
yeah.
really do kind of eat all day, but not meals. But I have snacks all day. I'm snacking on something, um, but it's not really affecting my weight like it used to. My weight's not going up, so that's the good thing. And I feel like it's just so easy. I don't know. I can't say that it started off easy necessarily, but it's so easy now for me, and I love the food I love my food. I
Mhm.
just love it. I meal prep. I usually meal prep my dinners, like 4 dinners a week, just so I have something ready because, a lot of times after work, I don't feel like preparing
Mhm.
meals from scratch. So I try to meal prep. I just make one recipe for the week for 4 dinners. And I'll
Mhm.
switch it, every week. I might have chili this week. I might have spaghetti next week. I might have some potatoes and seitan the week after, whatever. But the point is that I kind of alternate that around a little bit, and I love it. It's amazing. I look so forward to my dinners, particularly lunch. I usually just throw some things together. Usually it's a salad. I may put some tempeh or some tofu or occasionally some mock meat on there.
Mhm.
But I try to make just a good vegetable salad, use minimal dressing, but a little bit. I still use a little bit of dressing. But I monitor I monitor what I eat. Like I'm still tracking my food. I
Mhm.
stopped for a while, but then when I went on this cut in January, I started tracking my food again. I kind of like tracking it. I know it can be a pain, but I like it because it gives me control over something that I clearly have not controlled for the vast majority of my life.
And I
And
think
now I
it
have.
probably helps make sure you're getting all those nutrients that is sustaining you too. So like, I think it's important, especially if you're on a diet and you don't feel right, or you feel like you're low energy or this or that. You might be, nutrients are so important, too, like we were talking about, and digestion and everything involved in that. If something's off, then something might be off that you're not getting enough of in your diet, because we can all get stuck on just eating one thing sometimes, and
Mm,
it's like we don't have a whole lot of variety. And did, like, I noticed when we were in the other group too, you like, definitely, I feel like at some point, I don't know if this helped you, but it helped me, and you might be getting ready to get to this, but I felt like when I really made that connection, about, I guess it was about 8 or 9 months, 6 months maybe, into being about, like, from being in vegan groups. Like, that's why I always recommend people join them. I learned some things about the animal industry, what goes in food, what
mm,
happens to animals, what, you know, kind of like all of the things that I would go on it for a diet, it became like a way that I was going to find a way to make this taste good without going back to that old food when it resonated like for me that this is what I would never eat an animal again, you know? And not everybody does it that way. Not everybody ever gets to that point. Most of the times people might get to a certain, it's always going to be plant-based, which is still great. We're all still saving animals,
Mhm.
but I think is the reason, even though I was on a lot of diets, it never put me back to a place of going back the other way. Did that help at all? Or was it just finding you a diet that you felt like you enjoyed? And that's another thing I want to get into after that is how you enjoy your food. That's important too. I love that you enjoy what you're eating because that means you're not going to alternate to look for something else.
Yeah, so I don't know if you can see it, but I've got my Farm Sanctuary shirt on. You got to go to Farm Sanctuary in Watkins Glen, New York, this past summer, which was really a great experience. But yes, 100%. Look, I mean, probably like most people, or maybe not like most people, I had a good idea what was going on in those slaughterhouses. I had seen some videos. I don't remember if I saw a specific documentary, but I had seen videos of it and I couldn't watch them. I mean, I'd start watching them and I would just be like, I couldn't watch it. It was just sick to me, you know.
Yeah.
And I still had that disconnect a little bit. That,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, I didn't when I went in the grocery store and walked through that meat aisle when I was still eating meat. I didn't automatically think, oh my God, this is like a morgue to me now, you know. But
Right.
but it is now. Like, I mean, I'm not saying I can't walk through there, but I walk
Mhm.
through there quickly. I don't want to. I don't really want to hang around in that area because I see what it is, and it bothers me. It really does bother me, um, and particularly since we don't need it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's. I get that if human beings needed something to survive, we're gonna do what we got to do to survive. I mean, I get that, right? I mean, all species are going to try to do that. They're going to try to, if it's food, you're going to try to eat what it needs to survive. If it's something else, you're going to do at a minimum, you're going to do what you need to survive. Um, but we don't even need it. We don't
Mhm.
even need it. And the fact of the matter is it's causing us problems, right? I mean, it's causing us diabetes and heart disease, and it's causing us high blood pressure, and it's causing these things that are horrible. And we don't even if we just lay off of it, even look, I mean, even the people like you mentioned, even the people that or I don't know if you mentioned this specifically, but you mentioned like even people are just plant-based and that's all they are worried about is just being plant-based. They're still saving animals, right? They're still going against the norm.
Yeah.
And so I mean, we can't really, I mean, I don't think we should criticize those folks. I'm on some vegan Facebook pages, and of course, there's a lot of trolls on there, whatever. That's a whole other thing. But there's also vegans on there that'll criticize other vegans because they say they're vegan, but they eat honey or something. And I get it. Like, I do get that you're still being cruel to something. You're being cruel to bees. But if you're not eating beef and you're not eating chicken and you're not eating fish and you're doing
And
you're doing some real.
realizing we didn't all get from point A to point, this. And
Mm,
for some reason, when I first went vegan, I never ate a lot of honey, but I never even thought about honey being like
right,
an animal product. Like I think, and a lot of people, even in the beginning, they're like, "Can I eat fish?" Like they don't think of that
right,
in life. And I think at some point you could have someone come in. You don't want to get them turned off. I was just talking with Marquita about this too. You don't want them to be turned off by someone going at them, I guess, and then
mm,
go the other way because if they're evolving on that journey, yeah, now they might eat honey, and then they might see a video 2 weeks from now that explains, oh, that this particular vegan doesn't believe in eating honey, and it's like it might just awaken something. Like our consciousness is not going from A to Z in 5 minutes with this. Even if
that's
we
right,
really contemplate our own journey, like look when you read the book in your 30s, I think it was at some point that the man said we shouldn't need meat or we should reduce it or eliminate it, but it still wasn't a connection there of why the
right.
animal would be harmed. And but that was part of your journey, so the fact that you were able to step into that and not be turned off by, I think keep giving people positive reinforcement in anything, whether it's diet, whether it's your kids, instead of going at them for what they do wrong, instead of telling them also what they're doing right, like whatever it is, your spouse, if you don't thank them for what they're doing, it definitely is not going to help to always go at people that, with the things they're doing wrong. Is a way, and a nice way, to maybe say it and even relate that to people. And I think that was a great course, like Angela Crawford, Claire Mann, and Mariquita had us in, which was helping the right way to explain to people what we do, and realizing that we're all just people, and we're all on our journey, and we're not here to judge or criticize. We just we care about what we eat, we care about animals, and we care about people, and it's a tough juggling act to watch people get sick and remain in pain, when that in your heart that they could probably eliminate that by eating a different way.
And I've always, like, for me, because I'd been on so many diets and things, for me it was always like, so change the way you eat for 30 days. What difference? Like, I could change the way I could eat anything I could do anything for 30 days, just about, you know what I mean? Like, just do it and try it. Because the thing is, and we, I think many of us know this, is like, you feel so good and you just want other people to feel this good.
Yeah.
Like, I want other people to experience this. I don't want, you see people, and I'm seeing it now that I'm 58 years old, and I'm seeing a lot of my contemporaries, people are dying from heart disease, from, they're dying. And it's like, I don't think you have to die. I think you just need to change your diet. Mm-hmm. And I think I don't think you have to have it. And it really, it kind of hurts to see people that you care about, and they just,
family and people you're really close to. I mean, not only to mention people you're acquainted with, but still, it's like, it's very, very difficult to see that. And I think that's, if anybody's watching this that thinks that, like, why do they want to talk about it all the time? That's why, because it's like, you want people to be where you are and understand it. And you realize it's hard because it was hard for you. So, it's like,
that's true.
When we're told stuff as teenagers, nobody's going to give us advice that we're probably going to take, but at least planting the seed, we remember, like, oh, my grandmother did say this way many years later. And I feel like if we say something the right way, in a loving way, it's going to make a lot more difference than, the other way, or shunning people. Because, when we were all meat eaters at one point, most of us haven't been vegan since birth, we wouldn't have wanted someone coming in and smugging us, or, flipping our plate upside down. That wouldn't have made me want to say, hey, what's this vegan thing,
Right.
And I think also, I've noticed with you, you have a lot of information out in, like, the bodybuilding thing. Do you feel like that also resonated with you, with the people that you had, like, coaching you at first about the building muscle? I had no idea you weren't always into bodybuilding.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, no, the people that, even in the first program, I mean, the idea was to build some muscle, they just weren't actively involved with any bodybuilding, that whereas, like, Giacomo and Danny, who I'm with now, they are. And one of the cool things is, now please understand, I've never done any bodybuilding competition. I don't know if I ever will, but, Danny and Giacomo, and also Robert Cheek, who you may know, they call him the godfather of vegan bodybuilding. They started a vegan strength team, basically, right, to compete in vegan strength sports. And it's actually called Vegan Strong. And what they do is they take a team of, they take a team of vegan athletes to, it's been the Mr. America. I think, I don't know if it's been.
I put the wrong, I didn't see, I thought.
No, that was it. That was it.
It was? Okay.
Yeah. So they take them to Mr. America.
Another cool picture.
In Atlantic City, which is one of the biggest, bodybuilding / sport, strength sports events in the country, maybe in the world, I don't know, but in the country, it's one of the top ones. And they take a team of vegan athletes, bodybuilders, CrossFitters, strongman competition, and power lifters, also kettlebells, another competition. And they take them there every year, and they compete against mostly non-vegans. Um, and this year I got to volunteer. Because Giacomo and Danny are involved in it, I got to volunteer and be involved in it this year, which was awesome. It was so awesome. These athletes are all very dedicated, and they just want to do their best. I mean, they're not trying to, like, ha ha ha, we're vegans and we beat you, but it certainly helps to show the world, to the extent they're paying attention, that you can be a very good strength athlete, even win your competition, on a vegan diet, because let's face it, that's sort of against conventional knowledge. I mean, I can't tell you how often I'm on Facebook in some of these vegan bodybuilding sites, and there's somebody on there that's like, oh, you can't do, as a vegan, you're just going to be scrawny and weak. Well, I watched our vegan CrossFit team, men and women, won first place at Mr. America this year. We had the top we had the top strongman men, and we had the top strongman women, strong woman, whatever. I don't know if they changed the name of the competition for women versus men, but we had the top lifters in both of those categories, and our power lifters won like everything. It was crazy. I mean, they didn't win every single thing, but our powerlifting team, they won so much. It was insane. I mean, they were all wearing like 5-6 medals on, because they just won so many things. We had the top male power lifter and the top female power lifter in the whole competition. And our bodybuilders, they did well. Now, bodybuilding is different, right? Bodybuilding is the others are not as subjective because there's some competition. You have to lift a certain amount of weight, or you have to accomplish a certain physical thing, like in CrossFit. But for bodybuilding, it's all subjective. It's just what the judges see, right? So I don't believe we got any first places in bodybuilding, but we got some of our bodybuilders did place top 3 or 4, which is pretty amazing when you think about it, because I think that's the toughest of all because that's the one that Mr. America is known for, is the bodybuilding. I mean, I think the other stuff has been added over the years. CrossFit isn't even that old, right? I mean, they couldn't have had CrossFit 50 years ago because I don't even think it existed. But it's really interesting. And the thing, one of the other things I noticed about our bodybuilders is they all tend to be on the older side, which is pretty good, because I don't think longevity is a big thing for bodybuilders generally, because, when you think about it, these guys, in addition to a lot of them, taking performance enhancing drugs, which all these vegan bodybuilders on the team do not. They're all tested. These are tested events, Mr. America. So there shouldn't have been anybody on there, but we know there are people that cheat, I'm sure, somehow figure out a way. But by and large, I don't think there were a lot of people on PEDs. And I don't think the vegans were. But, with the thing about bodybuilding is it's not really good for, bodybuilding for competitions. It's not generally good for you, right? Because you eat a lot to gain these muscles, and then you go on these crash diets to lose it. And then you compete when you're at your lowest weight, which is probably not very healthy. And then you go back to eating again, and then you cut again. And then so for competition bodybuilding, it's not known to be a very healthy thing to do overall. But we've got bodybuilders in their 50s that are competing. And I mean, that's pretty good. I'm not saying there aren't non-vegan bodybuilders in their 50s that compete. I'm sure there are. But a lot of non-vegan bodybuilders are dropping dead before they've hit their 50s too. And that may be because of performance enhancing drugs more than anything else. But it also may be because they eat, 12 eggs a day and 5 chicken breasts at every meal. That could be doing it too.
The important thing that the message that sends across is, I think a lot of men, especially, and even women who are involved in, any type of wanting to be strong, and I think Angela Fischetti talks about that, how important it is also for all of us not to maybe be bodybuilders. Like, I mean, I saw the picture of you and Jeff. I think he just was 40 years vegan, and he's like, won so many competitions. Like, you definitely can do it without muscle, but I think we had in our mind from that programming, you need to eat a lot of meat for protein, and not realizing there's so many other things that have protein in it. In fact, that's where the animals tend to be getting it from, which it's like a connection thing. So I think, between understanding looking at yourself and looking at other people. It's putting out there to the world, whether the bodybuilding itself, I agree, isn't always the healthiest thing, but if you're going to do it, if that's already, manipulating the body enough, definitely putting all that meat in. And if you're doing any type of enhancing drugs, like that's, like a recipe for disaster, right? So like,
Yeah.
at least if you're going to do it vegan, right? Like, so you're not getting all the clogged arteries at the same time you're straining your body with the, and I think that is a great message. And I love that you share all of that information. I think you just shared on the page all the stats, like, and the pictures of being there volunteering, because it's like, it doesn't, the world is still waking up to the fact that you can be vegan and still have muscles, or you can still be manly and still be vegan, and it's like, it just has, like, just the way meat has been programmed, they've also programmed the world to dislike veganism, I feel like.
Yes. I mean, it's really interesting because I know people, they don't trust the government. They don't trust the oil companies. They don't trust the drug companies. They don't trust the lawyers. They don't trust the doctors. But boy, you say one bad thing about the meat industry and they will defend it to the death. And it's like, why? And it's all because we've been marketed by them since the day we were, born, to that meat is good for you. You have to eat meat. We're humane. We do everything right. We don't hurt the animals. They live happy, healthy lives until we slit their throats. We've all been programmed for that.
They're fed grass, which happens to be their natural diet, of course.
Right, grass fed, right, exactly.
You're not shot with all the hormones, right? And
exactly.
It definitely is true. Thanks.
So I don't understand it. It's like, why is this one multi-billion-dollar industry you trust? They don't trust tech. They don't trust, everybody's out to get them, except for the meat industry is wonderful. And it's like, I don't understand the disconnect, but I think it just goes back to that, what is it called? Confirmation bias, where you want to hear good things about your bad habits. Mm-hmm. And we all are. I mean, believe me, we all are. I want to hear good things about I'm not saying it's a bad habit, but I want to hear good things about my veganism. I don't want to hear bad things about it.
Exactly. Right? When I was, I don't anymore, but when I was drinking wine, I wanted to hear that. I kept wanting to reshare that thing where you got to have it every day, right? Like, no, that's what's
the
great
antioxidants
every
or
day,
whatever,
right? Not the actual alcohol is dehydrating, right? Not that it, if people are drinking moderation, but like literally, that's not what the good part of it was. The alcohol, it was the grape that was. I was, but I wanted to hear that confirmation. Like, I think it was Jeff shared the other day the thing where more doctors smoke Camels.
Yes.
Or it was. Yes. It's like, like everybody wanted to hear that then because everybody was smoking. Even that was probably out when they knew there was a problem. And I know it can't be tip top healthy. I hear people all the time, well, something's gonna kill you. Yeah, but like while you're here, the quality of life, like try to help your body out is where I came to in my older years here. I don't want to destroy my body either. Like give it. You can still. I feel like people think it has to be these two black and white things. You either have to eat healthy and be miserable, or you have to eat bad and be and feel like you're living life. But like vegan kind of molds both, where you feel good ethically what you're doing, you feel good what you're eating, and you enjoy your food regardless of which vegan diet you're on. There's so many good things that you can eat. You're not missing.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it is pretty amazing that you can still eat. And the thing is, you can still eat the same things. They're not made out of animals, and it's amazing, really. And look, I've heard this enough times to believe it's true that your taste buds do change over time. I don't think it takes a super long time, but over a month or two, your taste buds tend to change. Because here's the thing. I'll give you an example. I remember a couple of years ago, I eat berries. I eat a lot of berries, as I'm sure you do too. And I was eating some blackberries. They were really good. They were really tasty. And I said, and there was somebody at work, and I said, would you like some of these blackberries? And she goes, no, I don't really like blackberries. And I was like, why don't you like blackberries? Or she said, I don't like berries or something like that. And I said, why don't you like berries? She said, they're not sweet enough. They just don't taste sweet to me. And I now realize that we as a society eat so much food that is so hyper palatable. It's so sugary. It's so sweet that compared to what Mother Nature has to offer, it pales in comparison because we're adding so much sugar. You know, you drink a Coca-Cola and then you eat a blackberry. I'm sure that Coca-Cola is going to be a hell of a lot sweeter than that blackberry was, you know.
Right.
And we all get used to that. We're being, you know, and we're being manipulated by, you know, food science, basically, right? I mean, they actually have scientists that do studies and determine which one makes people want to drink more Coca-Cola. If we put, you know, an extra couple tablespoons of sugar in it, or if we leave them out.
Not to mention the marketing where they share pictures of families and people having fun drinking the, you know, Coca-Cola. It's like, even though you're not paying attention to that kind of stuff, it might be like kind of like off in the distance. It's getting in there, and it got in there to all of us our entire life, where we, you know, and the memories we have with comfort food. And it's like finding that new comfort zone takes some years. Like, you've been vegan for a couple of years now. You have a bunch of memories from being vegan now that you don't have to, you know, always rely on this is what I used to eat. But you can also, you know, have stuff that tastes similar, or your flavor profiles will change. Like, I always equate it to, that was a good point you made, where like if you always drank regular soda, and diet soda is another whole nother story that I found out how unhealthy it is. But in the most part, I found that out later on after I was drinking it for like 5 years. But they were like, you know, when you're drinking diet soda and then you take a drink of someone's regular, it's like, oh my gosh, how do you drink this sweet soda? But yet at first the diet soda tasted bitter or had an aftertaste, but then it gets sweeter. It's like the same with food. Like, you know, a grape, you know, some people might not, they might think, oh, that's not sweet enough, but like, that's because you're comparing it to a cupcake, you know. Like,
that's right.
It makes a difference. That's a good, yeah. Even stuff within being vegan, I don't know if this happened to you, like avocados, I didn't like it first, and then I started liking them. And just recently, I think it was like arugula, you know, and a bunch of different things, you know. Like, it's like I had to slam dressing on top of stuff, where now I can use less to almost barely none. But it's just, you have to give yourself that time to change, and you've got to make accommodations. Like you said, maybe you needed the extra protein even more than normal to start out, if that's what you felt like you needed. Maybe you need a few more avocados, nuts, and seeds in the beginning to sustain that heavy feeling, whereas like now I don't need as many, you know, like after your change your taste and your body adjusts to it. And I think that it's definitely it's a transition, you know. She said, have you read the Carrie said, have you read The Pleasure Trap? Someone else tells me about that.
So I haven't read the book, but I'm familiar with it because I've seen, I think it's Doug Lisle that wrote, one of the authors anyway. I think it's two of them, but it might just be him. But I've seen him interviewed several times about it, and it's very interesting. And it's exactly what we're talking about here, about how, you know, the dopamine hit we get from, you know, eating certain hyper palatable foods, and you know, the cards are stacked against us. Right? I mean, the food companies have the science, and the science says if we put these additives or these things in the food, people are going to want more and more and more, right? I mean, you can't just eat one potato chip. They're going to want more and more and more. And so, look, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's all about making more money. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? And it's really funny to me when people will make it sound like it's the vegan. Oh, I'll give you an example. There's that recent documentary, which I haven't even seen yet, but the one about where the twin experiment, where they, right? Are you familiar with that?
Yes. I didn't watch it either, but I've heard a lot of people, they've given me the synopsis of it. Yeah.
Right. Me too. And I intend to watch it at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it. But oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought again. It sucks.
About making your taste buds changing.
Oh yeah. So so these people are complaining that, so I'm on Facebook and people are talking about it, and it's on a vegan site, right? It's on a vegan page, and the people are saying that people are like, oh, it's really cool. It shows that, eating plant-based is really good for you and all this kind of stuff. And then there's other people that are on there and going, oh, well, it was sponsored by, I learned that some of the money that was given for it, or it was sponsored by vegan food companies, Beyond Meat or something like that. And I'm thinking 99% of food information that we get is being sponsored by the dairy and meat industry. So now you got one thing that's sponsored by, because I haven't verified that, but you got one thing that's sponsored by a vegan food company, but that's propaganda. That's propaganda. All the 99% that's sponsored by meat and dairy, there's no propaganda there.
Right? Like Google is, if you pull up, is meat healthy? You're probably going to get those first few articles sponsored by a meat industry, maybe more.
Of course, because they have the money,
the information.
Yeah, the meat industry has billions of dollars to spend. There's no big broccoli, there's no, it doesn't exist. There,
There's
now,
beyond association that we know of.
Correct. I mean, Beyond Meat, sure. I mean, they certainly have their interests, and I'm not saying they're not interested in making a profit either. I'm sure they are. And I'm not saying that everything they say is 100% accurate either. But the point is that they always want to disregard the one. It's almost like, there's 100 studies, and 99 of them say, eggs cause high cholesterol, but there's one that says they don't. It's like, well,
on the news, if it says that,
Yeah, actually, it's the opposite. Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, it's the opposite. If there's 99 studies that say eggs have high cholesterol, but the eggs are too high in cholesterol, but one of them that says they're really good for you, they'll throw out the 99 and take the one. And it's like, well, why would you do that? But it's because they want to hear good things about their bad habits. And we're all that way. Nobody wants to be told they're doing anything wrong. I mean, it's human nature. I think we want to feel like we're all doing the right thing. And I can't guarantee anybody that if they did exactly what I did, it would work for them like it works for me. I mean, I only have me as my example. But I will tell you, I met a woman a few weeks ago on a cruise, and she told me that she was 82 years old, and she told me that she had diabetes for 25 years and she was on insulin. And she said that somebody, I don't remember where, I think her daughter or somebody got her starting to eat a whole food plant-based diet.
Hear that,
in 3 weeks, she was off insulin. 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
And all her medication it's probably been a year or two now, but she said within 3 weeks she was off her insulin. She said for 25 years, she said, why didn't anybody tell me? She said, I went to so many doctors, not one of them ever told me that I should switch to a vegan diet and I would be able to get rid of I mean, who knows? It might not work for everybody, but may be able to get off my insulin. She said, I would have done it in 2 seconds if I knew that. If they told me that and it was, and there was some documentation to back it up, she's like, I would have done that in 2 seconds. She said, nobody ever mentioned a word to me, and I was on insulin for 25 years. Now, why wouldn't anybody give it a try? It took 3 weeks. So if somebody...
Speaking of sponsoring things, why would that not be a common practice? I know we have many doctors who talk about diet, but like the diet is so subjective because they tell you to cut down carbs and cut down on potatoes and sugar and fruit, which isn't even true, that you really, from what I've read. But the wild thing is like they're not giving that information. I think that's one of the reasons I do this and am so passionate about it, because that person felt like me when I was 42 and discovering all this. Like, why didn't anybody ever tell me like about like all this stuff and it's because I was probably doing what most people do and looking for not looking for it. I'm looking for the information that confirms my bad habits, or it's just the way life was. And he it seems like that information, we should have the choice. Like if we're given the choice, like, hey, here's how you can eliminate this, or here's people that have, maybe not you specifically, because obviously none of us are medical doctors, but once you really know the reason behind disease and what happens, in your body when you have insulin resistance. It makes complete sense why when she went vegan, she wasn't continuing to clog her cells, and the sugars could now get through without the added insulin. Like the insulin is trying to get those sugars in the cell, and it's sort of like, I call it like draining, clogged drains, like that
Hmm.
video I did. Like even with arteries, we're clogging. Like we realize it when it's our sink, we want to get a plunger and get it out. But like when it's our body, we just want to like limit the stuff that's clogging it, I guess, is the thing, or
Yeah.
trying to do it. And we don't realize it. And I think it's not because a lot of people don't not want to know. Like this lady would have been happy to hear it. Some people may know and choose to not do it, because I've done things like that too. I knew stuff was bad for me and I still continued to do it because it was a habit, or it was hard
Yep.
to stop,
Yep.
earlier in my life, for sure. Like I know it's hard. Like it's not easy to just change your diet. Like it's easy, like you said, maybe to do a diet, but if you're not happy with it, and you have like a life that you're leading, like people have to realize that you might work somewhere where food is, you all eat the same food, or your family all eats a certain way, and it's hard. But like if you really think about this lady changing in 3 weeks, like how much fun would you have with those same people or in those same events, whether you were eating with them or not? Exactly how you feel. Like if you're miserable every day and you're going in and out of the doctor's office, you're always having flus, colds, sickness, your asthma, whatever you have. Like I've heard a vegan story where it's gone,
Hmm.
where I don't have to be a doctor. After I watched probably almost every channel that I can get my hands on, every interview, and everybody has the almost mirror story. Once they make the connection and they do it, they've been able to sustain weight loss longer. They feel better, more energy. They're off most of their medications, or at least have, eliminated symptoms of disease. And it's like, whether it's out there in the mainstream, I don't know why it's not. I've never seen anything other than these Netflix and type movies coming on where someone's on, it's like a mainstream show about vegans transforming their life, and it's like, I feel like everything else is out there, but we don't get that information. And that's what I think bothers me, is people don't have the choice because it's hidden based on a lot of agenda, and like you
Hmm.
said, everybody wants to make money. I get it. Beyond Meat wants to make money.
Sure.
Also, the meat industry wants to make money, and that's where a lot of the dollars for the TV stations that we watch comes from. So I think
Hmm.
that's why we don't see a lot of that in mainstream. That was a good point.
Yeah, I do. I don't think there's. You just don't. You're right. I mean, and there's doctors that'll say it, but you got to be listening to those doctors. And most people are, if they're not already aware of it or interested, they're not going to listen to a lot, Dr. Greger or Dr. Clapper, because they don't even know who he is, and they haven't. Where are they going to see him?
Right.
Where are they going to see him? They're not gonna. So,
And even
um,
some of the top like podcasters and real big YouTubers out there that have health shows, they're now sponsored. Like if you
yes.
see someone on
Yep.
a health show, like these doctors, some of the quote unquote, I don't want to mention names because I wouldn't want anybody discrediting my channel, but like some of the bigger, YouTubers that are saying doctor in it, that are giving what I know from research is clearly misinformation, not that we have all the answers. And I've changed my vegan diet over time. I thought I
Mhm.
was right when I was eating one salad a day, and I thought I was right when I was eating Beyond Burgers, and I thought I was right when I was eating, nothing but fruit, and I thought I was right when I was eating fruit. Like, but still, the one premises that always sticks through anybody's diet is eliminating meat and dairy eliminates a lot of what is causing a lot of the issues, and that's
For sure. For sure. And like I said, it worked for me. It worked for me. And so at some point I said, I just want to be a good example. I just want to show a good example. And in order to be a good example, I got to be in good shape. I got to have some muscle, because everybody's going to go, yeah, so you're on a vegan diet, you're weak, you don't have any muscle, you can barely, do anything. So I was like, no, I don't want to be that way, because that's not a good example. That's not what's going to, because you're right, particularly men have this block, and it's all because of marketing. We've been marketed by the by the meat industry and the dairy industry that if you want to be a tough, strong guy, you got to eat a lot of meat and you got to drink a lot of milk, you know, and if not, then you're not going to be a strong guy. And if you're not a strong guy, then you're not really a man, you know, that kind of thing. You know, that should not be the way people think. But unfortunately, it is the way people think. A lot of people, particularly men. And so that was my feeling. My feeling was, look, if I'm going to be an example, if I'm going to make any change or get anybody to follow my lead here, I got to be a good example to them. They got to look at me and go, wow, look at what you've done. You know, this is amazing. And not just that you've done it, but that you've done it in your late 50s.
And you've sustained it, like, you know,
Yes.
longer than other diets. I think
correct. Yes, because anybody that knows me knows that if I'm thin today, you know, 6 months from now, I'll be 50 pounds heavier. And this time it's not happening. You know, this time it's not happening. It's not going to happen because I'm not going to ever let it happen. But it's not happening, you know.
And what time, it was 2019, you said, about, right? When you went vegan, 2020?
September of 2019. But I didn't start this fitness program until November of 21.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So the picture you saw of me where I'm real heavy in the shorts without the shirt on, that's from November. That's from November of 2021. Those are the pictures I took when I started the first program. Yeah, that one. That was me in November of 2021. And I was 55 years old. I'm 58 now.
When I first saw this, I didn't even realize, like, it almost looks like a different person, you know?
A lot of people say that. A lot of people say, and to me, it looks so unhealthy. I look so unhealthy. I mean, I'm pasty and I'm pudgy and I'm hardly seeing any muscle anywhere. I mean, if you asked me back then, how did I look? I probably would have gone, you know, I look pretty good. I look pretty, for my age, I look pretty athletic. Whatever. No, I wasn't, but that was in my mind, you know, even though I had body issues, I would have never said, oh my God, I look like somebody's grandpa that you see on the beach that hasn't lifted you know, doesn't lift anything but a 12-ounce beer. You know, I mean, I just can't even believe that I looked like that. And I don't know if I think I sent you the shot of my back. That was the most shocking to me.
So,
that shocked me because how often do you see your back when you don't have your, you know, I mean, I wasn't really paying that much attention.
No,
did I send you the one on my back though?
Let me load it in. I think I just
anyway.
In here.
When I saw that picture, I was like, oh my God, that's me. That's me with all that fat hanging down, the quote unquote love handles. I was like, oh my God, that's horrible.
I think I have it.
I never imagined myself looking like that. I never did. I mean, I never pictured myself that way, even though I was seeing myself every day. I never pictured myself looking that.
I don't think any of us really did we? Like, you know what I mean? Like, when we're looking at our current self, we're doing that confirmation thing. Like, yeah, I'm not I don't think I'm overweight. I never thought I was overweight. Like, I mean, I knew I wanted to lose a few pounds, but I didn't realize that I could be 50 pounds less and how much like my back pain could go away and things. I didn't realize things that were happening to me were a result of, you know, weight loss isn't everything. I always say, like, a lot of this is the bonuses we get with it, but it is something because it does add to a lot of, especially you said you had hurt your back at one point. I noticed like that is the number one thing. You're putting a lot of pressure on your body, like regardless of what we want to think. I know people don't want to say like, and I don't think everybody has to be the same size or the same weight or has to be skinny or has to be muscular. But like for the most part, there's a certain place that we can get to that's going to give ourselves optimal health with our body, you know, whatever that weight that feels comfortable for you. It's definitely not way up here, you know, and to be at your healthiest, it would be really hard to even eat enough vegetables and fruits and on this to be really, really overweight. You can, I mean, there's plenty of ways. I've been up and down a little bit, but never, like you said, to the fluctuations I've been at with other diets. You know, so I think it helps you sustain weight loss and like it helps you put more healthy things in because there's just a lot more healthy options when you're not eating, and especially processed foods, and at a minimum, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like if you're, I see a lot of people that do it really well, where they have, maybe they'll have some Beyond Meat with their meal one night, but then the next night they'll have it with mushroom, or you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
obviously there's different variations. Like I always say, like people that say I tried vegan, I wasn't feeling good. Well, they might have been eating potato chips, as the main part of their
Right.
diet, because they realized that potato chips were vegan. Well, of course, like, none of us,
Right.
you have to do it right. That's why I'm glad you got a coach, or people pay attention to people who are,
Right.
helping them to get from point A to point B without doing the way that they want to, because our way isn't always best.
True, true. And not everybody cares about the things that I care about or you care about either, as far as, I mean, I grew up as an overweight kid. So that's always in the back of my head, is I don't want to be the fat kid anymore. I don't want to be the fat kid. Um, but that's because it was traumatic to be the fat kid,
Yeah.
and I don't want to be the fat kid anymore. But there's other people that was never an issue for them. They were not a fat kid, or even if they were a fat kid, nobody gave them a hard time about it, or it wasn't traumatizing to them. So they may have other things that they're interested in, and that's fine. That's life. I mean, they don't have, just because I'm interested in being, in good shape doesn't mean everybody in my what I perceive as good shape doesn't mean that everybody else has to have that goal or that opinion, and I'm sure they don't. So I get it, because sometimes I see people and I'm like, why would you let if you've seen what I've done, why wouldn't you just follow my lead? Like, you've
Well,
seen
and
what
I
I've
think
done.
comfort zone is a lot of it too. Like,
Yeah.
I think we get comfortable being a certain way, or we almost feel weird doing anything outside. We've gotten so used to complaining about our situation that we almost
Yeah.
subconsciously don't change it. And we've all done that in different parts, whether it's
Yes.
diet or not.
You're right. You're right. It's like, I mean, I remember, when I was younger, all through school, I told myself I was no good at math. I told myself I was no good at math, and you know what? I was no good at math because I told myself I was no good at math. But in the adult world, granted, I use calculators and things, but in the adult world, in my job, I have to use math a lot, and I feel like I'm competent in it. I mean, I'm not
Right.
a superstar, but I'm able to do what I need to do to figure out what I need to figure out. But when I was young, I was like, oh my God, I don't want anything to do with math. There's the picture. Yeah, that one. I don't know. That was just a shocking picture to me. I was just like, my God, that's what I look like. I mean, I was
Yeah.
really picturing,
You can
somebody's
tell
great
there's a big
grandfather.
difference. I can see why you might look back at that. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't look at someone like that necessarily. That's what we all conceive as normal. Like
Yeah.
we think, like, because most of the people around us are not, in a different shape than that, really. That's just what, becomes, the norm.
Yes.
And so it
Yes.
becomes the norm for how we see ourselves. Like, that's why when we see ourselves many months later, it's like, like when I took that picture that I always show of the before and after of me, I didn't notice anything wrong. Like you said,
Yeah.
I thought things were normal. I was dealing with, I thought the allergies, the colds, I thought that was just how things
Mhm.
were. I thought that back pain was just there. Like, it just something I got unlucky about. And then, like you said, within a couple of months, reversing all of that and feeling like, wait, it's a revelation. Like, looking at myself then and now, it wasn't necessarily, like, to your point, maybe if weight's not important to you, there might be something else you're dealing with that would be a reason to try it, because it might be something based off the weight that you don't even realize, that you just think happens.
It's funny, JJ. I was watching this video, and it was a guy that was vegan. He was showing how he does his shopping, and he said, he goes, the other day, my wife mentioned to me that she doesn't get any more of that when you wake up in the morning. You have all that stuff in your eyes. That sleep or whatever you call it. But it's basically mucus, I guess. That it's basically snot, I guess, that comes out of your eyes. And I used to always get that. And I've worn
Me
contact
too.
lenses. Yeah, and I've worn contact lenses since I was 16, and I always thought it's because of the contact lens wearing that it's so bad. Because I'd get it pretty bad. Like, there were mornings when my eyes were almost stuck together. Not always, but sometimes. And this guy on this video is like, yeah, my wife mentioned she doesn't get it anymore. And he goes, I started thinking about it, and I don't either. And I was like, son of a gun, I don't get it anymore either.
I don't wake up stuffy like I used to, you
No,
know.
me neither. Me
I
neither. I used to have to blow my nose 10 times
all
every morning. I mean, now
sometimes.
hardly ever. Once in a while I do, but
Yeah.
hardly ever. And it's pretty amazing. And I think that's probably dairy more than anything else. I think
Mhm.
that's getting rid of the dairy, because dairy is supposed to be really mucus forming in the body. So I think that the dairy, may be the culprit that was causing that. But even inflammation, I mean, I just feel like I have a lot less inflammation. Generally. My back pain, which, yeah, it was pretty bad, and it hardly ever bothers me anymore. It's amazing, actually. It's really amazing. Because I just figured, as I get older, it's just going to get worse.
Mhm.
And my blood pressure was several times. I wasn't on any medication when I went vegan, and I'm still not on any regular.
Probably
Well, I'm not on
you're
any
getting
medication.
healthy and not, you kind of kept it
Yeah,
at bay, right?
yeah. But
Periods of
but
time.
but I was headed there, right? And
Mhm.
and one of the things that the last 4 or 5 times over the last 4 or 5 years or 6 years that I'd gone to the doctor, my blood pressure was like right at the edge. It was like 139 over 90 something. And they were like, you got to try to watch your salt or whatever, because you're getting right to that point where, you don't need medication yet, but you're getting close. And that did scare me, but it didn't scare me enough to do anything immediately, because,
Right, right.
it scared me enough to go, okay, I need to lose some weight, and then I went back to my normal, operating procedure of going on some diet. But now, I take my blood pressure myself, and it's really good now, like 122 over, 82, 83, whatever. I mean, it's really decent. I mean, I may not be perfect yet, but it's pretty darn good, compared to where I was for a long time. So, just things like that. I mean, I was headed in that direction. Believe me, it runs in my diabetes. It runs in my family. Diabetes, cancer for sure, heart disease for sure, all of them. So I was headed in that direction. I really
Yeah.
was. And looking at those pictures, I think I was a lot closer than I imagined.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think over time, like you said, all that things build up. And, had you been at that point and then something happened where you just, had to stay in for a while, or maybe if the back pain you didn't get around as much, who knows? It could have just put that over the edge. I wanted to say, because I love that you're so real and you kind of like, that's one of the reasons I love, seeing people that are like new, not new because you've been doing this for a while, but like closer to where a lot of people are that might be listening to this, that are not sure where to start and what to do. Like, can you explain to them? Because, like, I think everybody thinks people eat like a piece of lettuce. Like, just take us through like a day or two, maybe of this week. Like, what do you eat in a day? Like, do you wake up and eat, or like, like what you might have in a
Mhm.
day, if you
Yeah.
don't mind.
Yeah, so I 4 days a week I get up and I work out. I work out at home 4 days a week. So that I do that first. I don't. I might have a half a banana or something, but I work
Do you
out.
have
And the other,
equipment, or like what do you do?
yeah, I have dumbbells, but I have like adjustable dumbbells. But I recently bought what's called a functional training machine, like a cable machine. I got that
Oh,
in December and put that in my garage, and that's been great. That's been fantastic. So it's really, I've been able to up my game a lot with that. And I mean, there are some gyms nearby, but I have to tell you, I go to gyms when I travel, and I hate waiting for equipment. When somebody else is on the equipment, you have to wait. I hate that. So for me, doing it at home is perfect. I really, I've been tempted to join a gym a couple times because everybody's like, there's a lot more equipment, you can do a lot more things, and I'm just like, just don't want to wait for stuff. So I got this functional trainer machine in the garage, which does pretty much everything I need, and plus my dumbbells, and I'm pretty much good to go. And I walk. I get at least 10,000 steps a day. Every day. I don't miss that. I don't skip it. I get it done. Sometimes there's a thunderstorm. I just walk around my house. You know, Sooner or later, I'll probably get a treadmill. That'll make life a little easier with that. But for now, yeah, I'll just walk around my house until I get my 10,000 steps. So I typically for breakfast will have something like oatmeal. I'll have oatmeal with protein powder in it, and usually a bunch of different fruit like blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries. I'll use them all in there. And then that's typically my breakfast. I'll usually have something like that. Sometimes it's a cereal instead of oatmeal. Once a week, generally, I have pancakes. I make pancakes usually once a week, and so we have protein, and they're protein pancakes. I don't use protein powder in them, but I use oat flour and Vital Wheat gluten. So they're very high in protein, and they're delicious, and they taste like any pancakes, but there's no eggs in them, there's no milk in them. I mean, they don't taste any different to me than any other pancakes I ever had. They're really good. And then I usually have, oftentimes I will have like a protein shake around 11 a.m. Not always, but a lot of times I will. I'll just have, like a scoop of protein powder and water. Sometimes I might add a little bit of soy milk or something. I might add a banana.
Like, is the protein?
I like to mix it up. I've got vanilla, chocolate, berry, some of these sort of designer flavors like caramel vanilla latte or whatever. I like to mix it up a little bit. But yeah, I'm actually, a lot of times with that protein shake, I'll even like take my coffee. Like I do drink a lot of coffee, but it's mostly decaf. Like I'll drink pretty much a pot of coffee every day, but it's 2/3 decaf. And I will often just I'll have a couple of cups of coffee, that I'll take the rest of it and put it in my Vitamix with some protein powder, mix it up, and then I'll drink that up from like 11 to 12. I'll just drink that, sort of sip on that. In fact, I've got one now I was sipping on. And then lunch, I'll usually have a salad. I'll make myself a salad with some different greens, spring mix, spinach, maybe some what they call power greens, the kale mix. And I try to put as many vegetables in there as I can. I'll put some carrots in there, some cucumbers, tomatoes. Just try to put a lot of vegetables in there because, as you know, they have hardly any calories. And then let me just close the door because the dog's barking.
He wants your attention, right? He's taking Dad away for way too long.
Well, my wife.
All the time, by the way. I realized we ran over. That's why I have to plan mine.
Yes. No worries. So anyway, and then I'll usually add I need to add some protein to that salad, right? So I'll usually have something like, I don't know if you're familiar with TVP, textured vegetable protein. I will sometimes add that in. It's just like dried, typically made out of soy, but sometimes made out of pea protein. But it's almost like meat crumbles, but it's dried, and you add hot water to it, and it rehydrates. And you can flavor it. You can put spices and things on it. But I'll either have that, or I'll have like tempeh or tofu on top of it. And I like to typically maybe make my tofu in the air fryer or in the or just do a little quick pan fry with no oil, just to get it to have a little bit of a texture, a little bit of a crunchy texture. That's typical, or some mock meats occasionally. If I purchase something that I will have that. But so that's typical lunch. I usually have some sort of a snack, maybe 4 o'clock, 4:30. Sometimes it'll be like a vegan protein bar, but sometimes it'll just be a piece of fruit and maybe a little bit of peanut butter, something like that. And then for dinner, I usually will make I usually have a pre-made meal that I made on the weekend when I meal prepped. And it'll often be like either a vegan chili or a pasta dish that I use, like a high protein pasta. You can use chickpea pasta or lentil pasta or really high protein. So I use something like that. And I probably will also throw some tofu in either one of those just to get a little extra protein in it. And then I like to save some calories for a snack after dinner. For a long time, I was making like nice cream, basically blending bananas with protein powder and some cocoa or whatever, and making and that's really good. But I lately have been on a cereal kick, and so I've been having a bowl of cereal at night, just as my final snack for the day. I'll have a bowl of cereal. I might throw some strawberries in it. And then usually if I have enough calories, I'll have soy milk. If I don't have enough calories, I might have almond milk or one of the lower calorie, milks, with that as well. And I just try to find like a vegan cereal that, something that I like to eat. And that's that's pretty much what I have, during the day. And that's pretty typical. That's pretty typical of my day, is it's kind of like that.
I think that, yeah, it's like if people are thinking, oh, well, he's going to be hungry all the time, as you can see, he's eating his, 3 meals. However, we all do it. It's always done like, and like you said, if maybe you like to have like more protein than others if you're trying to build muscle and things, and I've heard people say that too. Like, I probably for my protein, I'm eating like bean sprouts or whatever, and let's see what the last thing I want to say is supplements. Do you take like B12 and things like that?
Yeah, I take a multivitamin, which, by the way, that's another thing. People are like, oh, well, vegan's clearly no good because you take supplements. I took more supplements when I wasn't vegan than I take as a vegan, because I was taking, I was taking so much stuff before, because everything's supposed to be a miracle and help you lose weight or help you get healthier or whatever. And so I was taking all kinds of things before, but I take a multivitamin. And I have to give a shout out to Jeff Palmer. You mentioned him, and there was a picture of me with him. I've been using some of his supplements as well, and I really like them. I'm using his omega-3 supplement, which is made from ahi flour. Yeah. And Jeff's got some research on that that's really interesting. I think it might be a little controversial, but about how the ahi flour may be a better source of omega than algae.
Okay.
It may be a healthier source. Again, I think it might be a little controversial. I actually asked I saw Dr. Greger on the cruise I was on. He was a speaker on the cruise I was on. And yeah, and I talked to him about, and I mentioned it to him, and he's like, yeah, I don't necessarily buy that. But so, so it's got to be controversial. But Jeff has the research. I mean, it's recent research, and it's I think it's good research. So from what I can tell, I'm not an expert by any means, but I like his omega-3. I use his, there's a supplement called BCAA, branched chain amino acids. And these are the amino acids that are the most difficult ones to get through food. Actually, I don't know if they are the most difficult, but they're harder to get from eating food. So I take a supplement of branched chain amino acids once a day. I put it in my water, and I usually drink it while I'm working out. And I also use what they call a pre-workout, which you may not even need to use, but the one I use doesn't have any stimulants in it. It's just, no caffeine or anything. It's supposed to just give you a little more energy during your workout. And the way it's supposed to do that is by dilating your blood vessels a little bit. So it allows more blood flow in your body. So I think it's what does that is called nitric oxide. I think there's nitric oxide that, and when it gets into your bloodstream, and this is something that Dr. Esselstyn's a big proponent of, is the nitrous oxide, the nitric oxide, which I guess mainly you can get from eating leafy green vegetables, is where it really comes from. But anyway, this particular supplement is just supposed to give you a little more energy and a little more blood flow during your workout. I don't know if it works or not, but I take that too. But other than that, I'm looking at my supplements right now. I take creatine. Creatine is supposedly one of the most researched supplements ever, and it's not supposed to be harmful in any way. It's not a performance enhancing drug by any means. I think when people first heard of creatine, they thought it was, but it's not. It's supposed to help you retain some liquid in your muscles, more water in your muscles, and it makes them look a little bit bigger because of that. But it's also supposed to have some real benefits for brain health too. So that's another reason that I'm taking it, is because I was like, why not? Why not take it? It's supposed to be completely harmless, from all the research and so I was like, you know what, I'll take that as well. That's pretty much, if I'm not missing anything, that's pretty much all I take. And I don't know that any of those are, I do think the multivitamin, because the multivitamin has the B12 in it that we're talking about, but here's the thing. It's kind of like when people say to me, well, where do you get your protein from? Which they say to all of us. And of course I explain it to them, but then I also say I can tell them exactly how much protein I eat every day. And I'll say to them, how much protein do you get? And they don't have a clue.
And the other thing is, I don't think people realize that everything literally has protein in it. Like pineapple has some protein in it. But if you're trying to get it, like that's why I've heard people say, well, I need to eat meat because I don't, it's like
Yeah.
there's a way you can get enough protein in any way you eat. And if you're, like it, the way that you do it, you like to use like the tofu and protein powder. And like
Mm-hmm.
if you're someone who doesn't like tofu or doesn't want to take protein powder, there's a way that you can get all your protein. You can eat nuts or chia seeds, you
Sure.
know. You can also eat like, there's tons of things like what Matt
Mm-hmm.
was talking about. You could blend up nuts in your salad to get your protein depending on how much, you wanted to get. And it's like, I think people center their diet around protein, like as far as meat protein, that's just because that's the biggest part of our plates growing up. We
Mm-hmm.
think this is what I need, but
Yeah.
like, like Carrie said, she eats cereal at night and she uses dulse leaf seaweed to replace salt and iodine. Yeah, and like salt, iodine,
Mm-hmm.
I for a while all I was taking was B12, and then I did add like D3 because it's we don't get a lot of sunlight here in the winter, and it's not close enough to us to even do anything. And you get a lot of vitamins from the sun. But another thing I didn't realize, even when I was eating meat and people that are eating standard American diet, you are blocking a lot of the absorption. So like literally you could be eating all the meat and like you said, not be getting, or eating some vegetables with it, but you're not getting the protein. Like even when you become vegan, you start to detox, you're not absorbing things the same as you might 10 years from now. So
Mm-hmm.
like, especially as I got older with like hormones and things that are starting, the menopause, premenopause, like I started reading about all the things and it's like it's not going to hurt. Like other people my age might be on a blood pressure medication and a three other things that the
Right.
doctor gave them,
Statin or whatever. Yeah.
this or that, estrogen, whatever. And it's like, okay, but I'm just because I want to take a multivitamin supplement, all of a sudden it's my diet. But you know what I mean?
Right.
They're
You're right.
taking
No,
all
you're
these
right. You're right.
medications. It's funny.
It's
Like I think people put
yeah.
up to your point, they might zoom in on vegan and say, "Oh, I wouldn't want to take a supplement what I can get from food." Another thing that Don talks about, Don Bennett was talking about on here, which I never thought about, was that the way that vegetables are grown now are different and fruits than they were hundreds of years ago. So like you're supposed to have certain things in your soil, and unless like
Mm-hmm.
you know the person how they grew it, let's say they don't put as much salt or whatever, something that we need in our food.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they started putting iodine in salt, because
Yep.
we weren't getting enough. So like, you have to sometimes supplement for the world that we live in. I'm
Well,
trying to put as much good stuff in my body as normal. And I don't think taking a B12 supplement, knowing that we can make B12, but like certain things that inhibit it, like if you have
mm-hmm.
ginger or if your body's not completely detoxed, you may not be able to make it in the intestine. So there's like so many gray areas. It's like I always recommend people, if you're going vegan, you're trying to feel your best and you feel you want to take the supplement, definitely take it. It's better than the alternative of not getting enough of everything you need. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it's the safest thing you can do. And there's a lot of different perspectives on that. Well, if I'm eating all natural, but you're not getting all natural food unless you've grown it yourself and you put those nutrients in the soil and it comes off of a tree outside of your house, really. So
Yeah. And the other thing people don't really seem to, I mean, whether they know it or not, they don't seem to focus on it, is that every animal you're eating is being supplemented. I mean, their food is loaded with all kinds of vitamin supplements. And, you might not be taking a B12 supplement, but you're getting a B12 supplement through that cow you're eating, not because cows produce B12, because they're being supplemented with it,
yeah,
in their diet.
they're not even
So
given, from what Matt was saying, I thought it was because they were able to eat plants, but most of them are probably being given feed that's not even
that's right.
nutrient.
Something,
Jay
something like 90, yeah, something like 90% of all animal agriculture is factory farm. But it's interesting how just about everybody that wants to, at least the people that try to start arguments with me, again, and it's mostly on social media because I'm not interested in arguing with people about anything, but most of the people, that want to argue with me about it on Facebook. You know, they all say that they eat what is it, grass fed, no antibiotic, cruelty free, whatever. Well, even if that stuff existed, which maybe it does, I don't know about the cruelty free part, but it's possible that there is some, let's say, beef that's raised without antibiotics and without and grass fed and whatever. Even if that was the case, it's very small percentage. It's only like maybe 10% or less of all the animal agriculture. So how is it that all these people are eating in that 10% category? Nobody's eating the 90% that came from factory farms. I mean, it makes no sense. It's kind of crazy, but and I know plenty of people that say they only eat farm raised, cruelty free, whatever, or free range, this or that, but they still eat at restaurants, and who knows what you're getting at a restaurant. You're getting the cheapest thing they can probably buy, and sell you for the most money. So the chances that they're buying those products like that, I mean, there may be a few high-end restaurants that focus on that kind of thing. Most of them are not, and certainly fast food is not. You're getting the bottom of the barrel is what you're getting when you're eating fast food.
What they're putting in food. And Dawn said, "Thank you for joining Dawn and JJ video. Cut out the middleman, or should I say the middle cow?" Exactly. I don't think we realized too. This I heard somebody say before. Well, if the animals are going to be roaming around or something, like we'd have too many animals, they were put here to eat. Well, not necessarily. We are breeding animals.
Correct.
Like ourselves, we're putting these animals through this ourselves. So whether they're free range or not, they were artificially most of the time impregnated they're building all these animals and making them extra here on the earth. And then they're using them for food, which they're using a ton of resources that could be, resources like water and things for people to feed the cows. And they're shooting them, most of them, with these antibiotics and things that are then ingesting in us, making us, sick. It's like when you finally see it, you're probably like this too. It's like, wow, like there's just such a weird cycle going on that I never realized was happening and that I was part of, which and it's completely understandable because that's what we know, that's all it is. But I didn't even realize that I never thought in my mind the animals were bred. I just, thought that, I don't know what I thought, they were just going and grabbing these cows that were just, they were having babies on their own and they wanted to give us milk and there was no harm in that. And I'm like, I just feel like my eyes were open, but that's a lot of what people don't want to open their eyes to. And I get it. It's hard, you know.
I get it too, because you don't want to know, right? I mean, I didn't want to know for all that time. And, and I still run into people to this day that are as old as me that think cows just produce milk. They don't realize that the cow has to be pregnant and give birth or have a miscarriage or whatever. But the point is the cow has to be pregnant in order for the milk to start. They don't even realize that. There's people, and I think I probably thought that too when I was younger.
Yeah, I thought they walked around and produced milk. I don't know why.
And I remember hearing, people from the farm industry, the dairy industry saying, well, if we don't milk them, it's very painful for them. We have to get the milk out. But they failed to mention the fact that because we took their calf away, so you could have veal. Now the milk is building up because we impregnated them so they'd have the baby. Then we took the baby away so the baby wouldn't drink the milk. And now the cow is hurting because they have too much milk. Well, that may be true, but they didn't give us all that information.
Right, exactly. That's true. And then of course, if you know any mother, she doesn't want the baby ripped away from her if she knows it needs milk. So that's another whole story we won't get into because this
that's too. That's another.
Just to put it in your mind, if it's your first time hearing it, like definitely research it if you're not sure what happens. If you want to know, or if you want that to be part of your motivation that we all have to not eat milk, you know,
Yeah.
or to be so strict with it. And sometimes people say, well, you're going overboard, if you won't eat this or won't eat that. But like, if it's in my mind that it's in there, I don't want to participate. That's just everybody's choice to do one thing or another. Like, everybody has something real firm they stand on, whether it's politics or this or that, and that just happens to be something that, that most vegans, tend to, once they learn that, they can't unlearn it, and
Mm-hmm.
it definitely is so
Yeah.
interesting to see what goes on. But yeah, been a really awesome conversation. Like, what do you feel like the biggest takeaway would be from your story, your journey? Would you feel that it's like, just like, find what works for you within the vegan diet?
Um, well, I think a couple things. I think, and certainly I've met people that are quite a bit older than me that went vegan way out, when they were way older than me. But I do think that one of the things that I really want people to know, because I think that, I didn't realize this myself, is that it's not too late. It's not too late to turn things around. We're all going in a certain direction. Especially when you get into your 50s, you've been probably doing things for 5 decades, the same things over and over again. And if it's not working, change it. And when I say it's not working, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like people will say to me, well, my grandfather died at 99 years old and he was perfectly healthy. But if they're honest with you and you ask them a few questions, you find out, well, he'd had a couple of heart attacks. He was on this medication. He was diabetic. He was this. So he lived to 99, but perfectly healthy he was not, So, but people won't tell you that, right? They'll just think because somebody lived to 99, that's the goal, live as long as possible. But we know that, what's the point of living a long time if you don't have any quality to your life, or if you have less quality to your life? If you can't do the things that you want to do, what's the point, right?
Right.
You'd be better. So what I would say to people is, I'm proof that you can be on the wrong track and you can turn it around, and it's not very hard. Yes, I say that from where I sit now, it's not very hard. I'm sure I know when I first started this, particularly when I first started counting my macros and tracking everything I ate, which you don't have to do that. I don't want people to think you have to do that for the rest of your life. You don't. I choose to do it because I find it helpful. Mm-hmm. But I know lots of people that don't track their food and they do just fine. Everybody's different. But I would say, just know that you can start this, and I don't care if you're 40, you're 30, 40, 50, 70. I've seen where some guy was in his 70s and he switched to a vegan diet and now he's running marathons. And it's like, and it's you can do it. You can do it if you want to, and you can probably, I'm not a doctor, and also, I can't guarantee that you can, but I've certainly talked to enough people that claim that their ailments have greatly reduced or gone away, many of their ailments, since they started a vegan diet, and probably not a junk food vegan diet, but a reasonably, well-planned vegan diet. I think, it can, and you know what? Here's the thing. Let's say you go, you know what, Dave, that's great. That sounds wonderful. It's going to be hard, but I'm going to give it a try. Give it a try for a couple of months. Don't give it a try for a week, because I'm going to tell you something. Any way you change your diet for 1 week, you're not going to like it. You're probably not going to like it. There may be a few. If you were on a strict calorie restriction and you change your diet to eat anything you want, you're probably going to like that. But for a week. But my point is that every time I went on Jenny Craig, or I went on Nutrisystem, or I went on Weight Watchers, or I went on any one of those Myriad, Atkins, whatever, the first couple of weeks weren't that much fun. The first couple of weeks kind of sucked, because I was either cutting my calories way back, or I was shifting to a different kind of food that was giving me stomach upset, or giving me gas, or giving me indigestion. The first few weeks your body has to get used to. So when somebody tells me they tried being vegan for a week and it almost killed them or something, I'm like, that's ridiculous. It's silly. You could not eat anything for a week and it wouldn't kill you. I don't
Yeah,
believe it would kill you as long as you had water. I think you can
you've
go
got
a
to
long
give
time
the
without it.
body time to heal
Right.
itself too, because our
Right.
body is like a, our body is going to fight the addiction to, this is Carrie's comment. She said, it's hard while we remain in the grip of addiction. After we are free of the
Mm-hmm.
addiction, it's easy. And I think the point of that is that anything you're addicted to, like if you
Yeah.
first stop smoking, you're miserable for a couple of days,
Yep.
maybe even weeks, and for a while, but
Yep.
after a minute, you don't feel that anymore. You're
Yeah.
off of that. When you stop drinking, for example,
Mm-hmm.
your body is, you think, I better give myself this alcohol because my body wants it, so I'm supposed to give it to it. But it's not always doing the best thing for your body. But then once you start putting the good stuff in, your body also realizes, oh, I see what you're doing. Yeah, we like this now. Give me more of this. And then you
Yeah.
start to feel the motivation to keep eating that way. But if you stop while you're still in those first, like, and some people have, like, I watched Jillian Berry. I don't know if you ever seen her channel.
Mm-mm.
um she's a raw vegan, and the literally the first day she went raw vegan, she felt perfect, never experienced any detox symptoms or anything like what a lot of people might experience by changing their diet. But then there's people I know who go through, like you said, maybe they don't feel good the first couple of days because it's different than what we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, the more health conditions that you have that you're trying to get rid of, you're going to feel a little bit of a issue probably at first. Not like, so it depends, like you said, everybody's coming from a different place, but usually, like with me, where I was coming from, I felt good after like 3 days. um
Yeah.
that made me feel like I didn't want to, I was only going to do it for 3 days. I was going to see if I could have a salad for 3 days, and it just took off from there. So, like, once you give yourself time, I think that's a great point. Tammy, I think you might know this person, right?
Yeah. I do.
There's a detox component as well that can make the body feel lousy. Yeah, our body wants to heal itself. That's one of the things that
Mm-hmm.
your body is always trying to filter everything out that you're putting in, and it's trying to get the absorption of the nutrients. And when we're putting, the good things in that are helping our body heal, it's cleansing itself. So there's going to be that moment of, okay, yeah, this is not
Mm-hmm.
feeling good, but it's like it's your body trying to, like we were talking about dairy. It's like dairy doesn't belong in a human body, which I didn't realize before. So that's why there's mucus, because mucus is there to help us. If we have a problem, we're sending those white blood cells, and I'm not a doctor either, so I might be using the wrong term.
Right.
We're sending like some inflammation to that area to hurry up and, like, stop the
Mm-hmm.
bleeding. Basically, we're trying to take care of it. So your body is essentially just causing the inflammation in your joints, is your body fighting all this, things that you're giving it that it doesn't want. And the mucus inside of you is your body trying to say, what is this? I need to get rid of this. So, like, the same way that you feel that, but you don't even realize it's lousy, is the same way that once you start putting the good stuff in and it starts to cleanse, you're feeling little things. That was a great point. Thank you, Tammy, and thank you for being here and watching. Did I think it's so amazing. I watch you guys at the paddle boarding and things, and being out in there, and it's like, it's so cool to watch. It just looks like you all have so much energy, you know.
That is, I mean, I will say that too. I mean, I never really thought that much about that, and I think I was always relatively active, except for that period of time with the back pain. But yeah, I mean, so many people I know that are younger than us. I mean, that they just can't do the things we do. It's amazing. Like they want to, they can do one thing. Maybe they could do. I mean, like I'll typically do a workout and then I'll go paddle boarding. There's been times when we've done both of those, and then we've gone indoor rock climbing. And I just, for me, I mean, it's no big deal, and I don't think it's a big deal for Tammy either. But a lot of people, when I've invited them to do these things or whatever, they're like, "Well, I can't do all that. It's too much. I'm tired." And they're usually younger than us. They're usually a lot younger than us, and it's like, what's going on here? But
Mhm.
but but I will say that there was a time, certainly in my 20s, when I spent way more time watching sports on TV than participating in anything. You know, I watched so much. I'd watched so much football, and and it's now I hardly ever watch sports on TV. Not that I don't enjoy it when I do occasionally watch it, but it's like I got things. I want to be busy and active on a weekend. I don't want to be watching sports. I want to be paddleboarding. I want to be doing something. I don't want to just be sitting around watching TV. And it's funny to me. I'm just like,
is where you stand up on the board and you use a paddle, right? So like, I'm like, I feel like now I'm lazy kayaking, right?
So let me just tell you one more story, because I know we've gone a long time, and I don't know when we need to cut this off. But so we have paddleboarded for probably about 15 years, right? We just decided it was something we wanted to do. We live in an area where it's perfect. It's perfect in our area. We don't have waves here. We're on the Gulf of Mexico. It's very calm, and we actually live on Tampa Bay. So in Tampa Bay is very calm. So we took up paddleboarding. It's not the kind of place you can surf. I mean, there's got to be a storm or something coming for us to be able to surf here on this side of the state. So paddleboarding is perfect, and so we started paddleboarding. And I will say that initially I was uncomfortable with it. I was really worried about falling in. I was just so worried about falling in. I don't know why. But anyway, I got over that. The more we did it, I got over that. And I can't tell you the last time I fell in. It's been years since I've actually fallen in off a paddleboard. But but anyway, so this past November, I saw something come up on my Facebook that said there was going to be a paddleboard race not too far from here. And I'd seen this paddleboard race before, but I never really thought about it. I'd seen it, it's an annual paddleboard race they do here called the King and the Queen of the Bay. And I said, maybe we should try it. So I said to Tammy, let's try it. And I didn't know if she'd be into it or not. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. So we had a month to prepare for this paddleboard race. And so anyway, we decided we were gonna, because we really don't paddle hard. We're usually just kind of paddling easy, and then we bring these nets with us and we scoop trash out. And you've seen those pictures. We usually pull a ton of trash out of the water, but we don't paddle to go fast. So I said we got a month to practice. Well, it turned out it was just one of these weird months where the weather. Normally our weather here in Florida in the winters is perfect, but this year was weird. It was really windy. We had a lot of cold days for us, cold and windy, and it just was not an enjoyable to go on a paddleboard. So we wound up only getting out 3 or 4 times to try to practice our fast paddling. And this is a 3-mile race, which we regularly paddle more than 3 miles, but we do it in like 2.5 hours. I mean, this is paddling 3 miles in like 40 minutes. So anyway, we got to practice a few times. So anyway, we went and did the race. And our what we said to ourselves was, look, the main thing we want to do is not embarrass ourselves, right? Let's try to finish. Let's just try to finish. So there's all these different divisions. There's probably like 10 different divisions. Some people are on kayaks. Some people are on outrigger canoes. Some people are on these really long paddle boards. Some people are on shorter paddle boards. And then there's men's divisions and women's divisions for each of those categories. Anyway, so mine was a men's 12'6" paddleboard, which honestly, most of the best paddleboarders are on 14-foot paddleboards because they go faster and they're just a little more, to them. But I have a 12'6", so I was like, I'll race in the 12'6" category. And then Tammy raced in a smaller board category because she has an 11-foot board. And we didn't know what to expect. We'd never even watched a paddleboard race before. We never even saw one. So we went and we did it, and it was hard. It wasn't easy. I mean, I just remember just come on, keep going, pull, that kind of thing. And anyway, I had so many people. I had no idea where I finished. I knew I wasn't first in the whole thing because there were people finishing before me, but they were also could have been in other divisions. I didn't know if anybody in my division finished before me or not. So anyway, when they call the awards at the end. Son of a gun, if I wasn't in first, I didn't win first place in my division. And there were at least 3 paddleboarders because they won't even give any awards unless there's at least 3 per division. So I won first place, and Tammy won second place in hers. Yeah, she won second place. So we were both like, wow, this is amazing. So we have to do that more. So we're going to do that more. But it was uncomfortable. It's one of those things. It was kind of uncomfortable. Like I was really nervous about doing it. And especially the day of it. I was super nervous. I was like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what it's going to be like. But now that I've done it, I'm like, okay, that's good. I want to do it some more. So, I think we're going to start doing that as well. So just another thing, that I did my first paddleboard race at 57 years old, so,
That's
and actually,
amazing. And
yeah.
one.
So, and one, yeah. And not that it's that big of a thing, but I mean, the other two paddlers in my division, I think one of them was in his 20s and one of them was in his early 50s. So I was the oldest one that
Oh my
placed.
goodness.
So,
And
and
what
I
year was
truly,
that? That was November?
that was December of last year. So
What?
just a few months ago. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So just another thing where, you just don't know. You just never know until you try, I mean, that's the thing about it. And look, there's things I've shied away from. There's plenty of things I shy away from too, but maybe at some point I'll do them. And it's kind of like I said at the beginning of this is, I've never competed in bodybuilding, but I'm not completely saying I won't ever do it because I don't know. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll decide to give it a shot. I don't know. It's not anything that's on my radar right now, but who knows? Maybe it's something I will try. At some point. But my point is that until you try it, you just don't know.
Yeah,
And it's the same thing with the diet. Until you try it, you're not going to know.
that's a
You
great
know.
point. Until you try
So.
it, you don't know if you're going to like the diet. I thought maybe it was a rhyme.
Right. And the thing about it is that, and people could say that with like, I mean, I know people that do these carnivore diets now, right, where they eat nothing but meat. But here's the thing. That's mostly what I did for most of my life. I mean, when I really think about it, I ate meat at every meal, some kind of meat, beef, chicken, fish, pork, every meal and every snack.
Mm-hmm.
Dairy, so I mean, yes, I wouldn't say I was on a carnivore diet because I did eat a few vegetables and I did eat some grains and bread. But when I ate that way, it didn't work for me. At least it didn't work the way I wanted it to work, So, so somebody said, well, why don't you try the carnivore diet? It's like, I did that for 50 years. It
Didn't
didn't work
work,
for me.
right? We were
Yeah.
carnivore, right? That's
Yeah.
where
I mean,
I had back pain and allergies and all kinds of issues.
yes.
I'm not going to go
Yes.
back to eating. Like, if you think about it right now, if you have meat on your plate all three meals and you're at, it's like, or it's carnivore, it doesn't have anything but meat. Like, from the research, and you can look it up too, like from what I have learned over these last 5 years, is that whether you're eating one that's walked around free range or whether the animal has been, let's say, oh, I don't eat antibiotic free, I eat antibiotic free meat, whatever the case is, meat in general, an animal creates its own type of fat because that's how it needs to sustain itself. So when you're putting the highest saturated fat like into your body, that is doing so many things a disservice. Of course, if you only eat meat and you've taken out bread and processed foods and other things, sodas, like you said, you're going to lose weight. You're definitely going to lose weight, but the long-term effects of only putting that stuff in there that's giving you the atherosclerosis, I might have said that wrong, clogging your arteries. It's clogging the cells, which blocks your insulin from being able to let sugars in. So it's eventually over time, that's why all of us, we feel completely fine when we're eating this diet. Like, I felt fine in my early teens. I was like you, I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even overweight or anything. When I got to 30, I had been eating that way for quite some time, still felt good. 35, that's when things started getting sketchy. It was kind of catching up with me, where maybe that's where I was developing a lot of the things going on. Your back pain got worse, and we're getting heavier, and we're putting in more and more on top of it. That's why people are like, oh, be careful over 40 or over 50. And that's when
Mm-hmm.
it really might be, a lot of people get on medications around that time. They start developing, the sugar starts backing up because for 50 years you have clogged those cells that need the sugar to go to. So, like, yeah, the carnivore diet, we don't know, what it's doing now, but we have ideas of people who've been vegan, like Esselstyn and things, for many, many years, who are living longer and healthier and running marathons. And I would just say that if you find short-term results from something, it doesn't always mean it's the healthiest thing. And to, definitely do the research and look at both sides of it, because we want to
Mm-hmm.
confirm our belief. And I've tried to disprove the vegan diet so many times just for my own benefit. Let me see what this one's saying about it. And every time it's ridiculous that they're saying that that's not healthy if you do it right. And obviously eating the highest, in my opinion, I noticed you even said you ate salad and berries, like Matt was saying too. Just adding the most amount of unprocessed, unmanipulated food to the diet is still the healthiest thing, because you're not, you know and one thing
Yeah.
we didn't speak about, you mentioned it briefly, but with supplements, when you're eating a lot of the processed food and bread, they are throwing some vitamin D and stuff in
Mhm.
there. So you're getting it with all the unhealthy stuff. So, like, you may need, I mean, and a lot of bread is vegan. I'm not saying bread in general is unhealthy, there's healthy versions of it. But, like, when you're eating a really unhealthy diet, you're still by mistake, whether they're shooting it in the animal or whatever, getting nutrients. So don't be turned off
Correct.
if you have to take a supplement while you're vegan. Like, it's not the
Yeah.
end of the world.
Right. Right. Exactly.
The diet's not healthy.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And the thing is even those, a lot of times you'll hear about, well, we want to eat the way our ancestors ate or naturally. The thing is, all those animals are, they've all been modified too, right? I mean, 10,000 years ago, I don't know if, well, maybe 100,000 years ago, I don't know if there were cows walking around. I think what I read was that there were oxen, and the oxen were bred over and over again, modified, genetically modified. I don't know if that's the right term to use for that,
Right.
but the point is, the cows of today didn't even exist. Those are sort of the creation of humans, that
Mhm.
we've bred them in a certain way so they produce more milk, or they're meatier or whatever. And the same thing with pigs. I mean, pigs, wild boars, right? We created domesticated pigs from wild boars. So the point is that when people are like, well, that's natural. Well, that's not any more natural than, I mean, that's less natural than some other processed foods in a way, So, I mean, I don't really buy into that natural
You
argument as
go
much, but
all the way back. I even read saying that we ate fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. And
yeah,
as we moved from the equator and things, maybe there was a freeze or something where they couldn't get the right food.
yes,
That's when we started eating meat. And
yeah,
it was meant to be as a survival thing. Well, right now, we're not surviving from it, we're dying from it, in my
right.
opinion.
And even then, think about this. I mean, we didn't emerge on this earth with weapons,
Mhm.
that we could bring down animals. I mean, human beings are not particularly fast. We're not particularly good at catching other animals, right? I mean, think about that. I mean, there would have been hundreds of thousands of years probably when we did not have even spears and things like that. I imagine. I mean, I can't believe that, humanity kind of came into existence, or evolved into existence with weapons, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if you look at like what apes eat, and the animals that we're the closest related to, they mostly eat fruits. I think they mostly eat fruit, actually. And they may eat some bugs, because I could see us being able to catch bugs, right? I mean,
Right,
we are
right.
we are
And meat,
physically
basically,
yeah,
right?
we
Like
are we are physically equipped to catch bugs. We are not physically equipped to take down a woolly mammoth. I'm sorry, but we're not, or
we're not
whatever,
even
even a
we
cow.
don't even crave it. Like, we definitely
Correct.
don't crave a like, when we see an animal, you mentioned going to
Right.
the sanctuary, it's not our thought to, like, I need to go over
Right.
there and attack it. That doesn't happen naturally like where it would with an actual carnivorous
Right.
animal. We, like, look at a
Yes.
strawberry or a berry and say it's
Right.
good.
Yeah, I mean, if you see, I've heard this example many times, but I think I first read it in that Harvey Diamond book I told you about at the beginning. Is you put a baby rabbit in with a baby human, or not a baby, but like a toddler. Their first thought is not, I want to rip that thing apart and eat it. Their first
Right.
thought is, I want to play with it. I want to
Yes.
play with it. We don't have that instinct to kill animals, to eat them. And even if we did, think about this: how many people kill an animal and eat it raw? Because that's what carnivores do. That's what real carnivores do. And
Hmm.
they don't pull the hair off, and they don't pull the skin off, and they don't, they just eat the thing, and they eat the intestines, and they eat everything. They're not. So it's like, are we really carnivorous in that manner? Are we really naturally carnivorous?
Hmm.
Because if we were, wouldn't we want to just eat that raw animal and get everything, get all the nutrients that come from the intestines, the guts? And we don't. I mean, we get grossed out by that stuff.
If we look at like fruit, that's one of the things we can eat without doing anything to it. That's
No
something we
prep,
pick up right
no
as
prep,
it's
right?
eat. So like it
And not,
definitely
and
makes
not only
sense.
that, and not only that, with at least with fruit, you don't even have to kill the plant to eat the fruit.
Right.
That's the other argument you hear all the time. Oh, plants feel pain. Well,
You don't eat
they
fruit
don't.
if you want to do that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they don't have a central nervous system. But I'll tell you what, yeah, you could eat fruit. I mean, the tree just keeps giving it, or the plant just keeps giving the fruit, and the plant will keep growing. It doesn't die after it produces the fruit, and you don't have to cut the whole plant out. If you want a pineapple, you just cut the pineapple off. You don't cut the whole pineapple plant out, and then it produces another one,
Yeah.
So,
It's like, if you really want to look at what things were meant to be or evolution, that definitely seems like it was meant for us to eat and not an animal
yes.
trying to run and get away, right? But
Yeah, I
right,
mean, try catching a rabbit. You're not catching a rabbit. I mean, unless you have a gun or a weapon or a bow and arrow or something, you're not catching a rabbit. They're so freaking fast, you know.
there's no way you could naturally be, able to do that. So it seems to make sense that your digestive system wouldn't be designed for something you would need three weapons and specialized skills or tank or car or whatever, you know what I mean, like.
Traps, whatever. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely. We have to make accommodations, obviously, but saying that's the natural way we were meant to eat doesn't.
Right.
From like a lot of research, and Jeff Palmer's another great example where he could speak a lot more intelligently on it, and a lot of the plant-based doctors, from looking comparative anatomy, it doesn't. We don't look like a carnivore intestinal system, so it like makes sense that that's not what we were supposed to eat. Can we can do anything, right? Like we can say we're an omnivore, but I don't believe that we are an omnivore in the whole true sense of the word, of looking at that one. Carrie said if roadkill doesn't make you hungry, you probably aren't a carnivore or even an omnivore.
That's a good point.
So,
That's a good point. And by the way, somebody pointed out recently that actually we are, people always want to say, oh, I'm like a lion, lions eat meat. Actually, we're much more like vultures because we don't eat it unless it's already dead.
yeah,
So,
that's true.
so really we're much more like vultures and buzzards if that's the case,
Mhm.
and there was a word for it. There was a word for, I don't know the word, but there was a word they mentioned which refers to animals that only eat corpses, that only eat dead flesh. And I don't remember the word, but they were basically saying we're not carnivores, we're whatever avores, because we only eat dead.
Then we're spicing it up and cooking it.
Well,
And
yes,
it's
yes,
like
of
when
course.
people say I don't like tofu. Like you mentioned, you eat that quite a bit, but like if you look at how a good chef doesn't just take a piece of raw meat and feed it to you. The same way you don't see meat as the animal. You don't want to bite into the hair and the flesh and everything. It's the same thing. You're doctoring it up. So like if you're taking tofu, or whether it's something you want to put together like eating fruit, whatever it is, you're going to make it taste the way you want to. Like any diet you're on, you use whatever spice you want. So like if somebody doesn't want to be, I don't want to eat all fruit, or I don't want to eat just fruit and salads, I want to eat, what can I substitute meat with? Well, of course you have some of the healthier meat substitute, but like if you're talking about tofu like you do, you don't probably just eat the block of tofu without cooking it. You know what I mean? So
No,
that would
you're right.
be the same as taking the meat without any flavoring. Nobody does it like that. No one truly, like, without the quote unquote way we've been taught that this is food for us. We just are adjusting our perception. Like you have to be open-minded enough to change perception based on new information, and I think that's where a lot of people cut off and like, no, that can't be true, right? Oh,
Yeah.
Carrie said maybe we were thinking of scavengers. Maybe that's it.
Maybe, but there was actually a term, and I don't, it was like a scientific term for animals that only eat dead animals, and and I don't remember what the term, and maybe it was made up. I don't know. I thought it was a scientific term. Maybe the person just made it up because they said, well, this is what we really should be, like, morgivores or something. I don't know. I don't remember the term, but it was basically talking about that the fact that we don't eat we're not like, if we are carnivores, we're different than every other carnivore except for vultures and buzzards, basically, that eat dead animals. So, so it's kind of interesting, but.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you. I know we've been at it for a while, but I think there was so much information to cover. And you're welcome, Muriel. Thank you. You have a great weekend too. And tell Michelle if she's here, we said hi. And thank you both for being on the show, both shows, and the Vegan Knowledge page, and for all you do for everyone, motivating them. And Carrie, I really appreciate you coming and all your awesome comments. And J&J Video, Dawn, of course, thank you for being here. And who else was here? Philip. Thank you for coming. He said hello earlier. Who else do we have? I know Tammy was here, Boomer and Beyond Wellness. I can't remember if Tessa was here on the last one, but hi, Tessa, if you're listening, and Raw Intuition. Thank you guys so much for being here. And I'm going to leave it to Dave to tell us his last thoughts or anything else that you wanted to say.
Well, I appreciate you having given me the opportunity to come on here. I really do. I've enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, we went on for a long time, didn't we?
It was fun though, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was great. It was great. I could talk about this stuff forever. I really could. But,
and I usually do. Right.
That's right. Yeah. But no, I mean, it's been good. It's been good. I've enjoyed it. By the way, if anybody's interested, the Vegan Strong team that I was telling you about that I volunteered with last year, and I intend to volunteer with them again this year at the Mr. America. If anybody's interested, they do some fundraisers so that they can bring all those athletes to Atlantic City. And some of them come from, we had a strong woman from France last year, and we had a couple Canadian athletes, and somebody came from Australia, one of our bodybuilders. So I mean, some of them come from all over the place. Yeah, but they do a few fundraisers. So it's called I believe it's veganstrong.com. It's veganstrong/plant built, so it might be plantbuilt.com too. But the point is, if anybody's interested in that, please check it out. They do a couple fundraisers where you make a donation, you get T-shirts and hoodies and things like that. So it's kind of a fun thing. And so if anybody's interested, it'd be great if people helped with those fundraisers. And otherwise, no, I don't have much to say. Well, I have a lot to say, obviously, or we wouldn't have been talking for the last 2.5 hours. But I don't have much more to say at the moment. Jeff Palmer, before he signs off on anything, he always does a flex. So I feel like, out of respect for Jeff, I'll do the same thing. And I guess that'll be it. Okay.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say, if you can send me the link, I would love to share that in the description when you find out the exact website. Okay. Anything else, anywhere else you want to share that you have any YouTube in the works yet or anything about your journey, or not quite yet?
Books? No, not yet. Not yet. Nothing like that yet.
No, it's coming. Okay, ready for the flex. Let's see it. Wait a minute. I'm going to flex next to you so you can see the difference of someone who doesn't.
Do both of them? Do both of them?
All right. Congratulations. Look at this.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, JJ.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.